Test 1, 2, 3.
Call this Board of Supervisors meeting of May 21st, 2013 to order. Roll call, please.
Supervisor Bronson?
Here.
Supervisor Carroll? Supervisor Elias?
Presente.
Supervisor Miller?
Here.
Chairman Valadez?
Present.
And let the record show all members are present.
Today, the person who was going to offer the invocation today was not able to make it. So I'm going to stand. I'm going to ask everyone to please stand and for a moment of silence for the families in Oklahoma, and it will be followed by a pledge of allegiance by Supervisor Bronson. Please stand.
Please join me in the flag. Mr. Chairman, if I might have a moment of personal privilege.
Please proceed.
Regarding the tragedy in Oklahoma, the governor and the mayor are asking if anyone wishes to donate and help, that they do it to the Red Cross or the Salvation Army.
Thank you. Any other points? All right, hearing none.
Mr. Chairman.
Supervisor Carroll.
Pardon me, Mr. Chairman, but last Friday I was notified that at the Pantano Christian Church at 1755 South Houghton
Supervisor
Road.
Carroll, if you could. We have a lot of new faces in the room. I just heard a ringer or something audio. Please remember to turn off your ringers or place them on vibrate. If you do get a phone call, please step out of the room, as we want to make sure and be respectful to everybody who's testifying. I'm sorry, Supervisor Carroll, please proceed.
That afternoon at the Pantano Christian Church at 1755 South Houghton Road, there's going to be a family festivities honoring public safety personnel, celebration of faith, family, and community. since we didn't have a prayer this morning, I thought I would remind people that this would be a great event. And if you get out there at a certain time, I was enlisted to sit in a dunk tank. I think you'll find that I'd be happy to take the slings and arrows for this church. So it's Sunday, June 2nd. Happy to be there. Hope other board members would find there's a young lady in the room that would probably give you more information and sign you up to be dunked yourself. Thank you very much.
I'll pay for anybody who wants to. No, I'm just kidding.
Bring it on, as they say.
All right, our next item will be pause for pause, and today we have Officer Bowden with Morris, who's a red and white Labrador Retriever mix.
Good morning. This is Morris. Morris is, as he said, a red and white lab mix. He is about 2 years old, came to our facility at the beginning of March and has been waiting for either somebody to come and pick him up or for somebody to adopt him. He came in wearing a collar, which is indicative of the fact that either somebody kept him as a companion animal or he's very skilled in purchasing and putting on his own gear, which makes him an even better dog to take into your home. He's been waiting for quite some time and very anxious to go home to a family. Very nice dog. I've had the wonderful joy of spending the morning with him. Very excited to smell all the new smells. I think he might be a good hunting dog. On our walk, he alerted to every single lizard that we passed. He did peacefully, though, sit and watch the ducks. Come back here, Morris. He did peacefully sit, so he is sedate in some ways, but very, very, very keen on small movements. I did notice that he is very skilled in sitting. Let me see if I can get him to do it for you. Morris, sit. Very nice. Because he's been with us for so long, his adoption fee is going to be discounted. He will be $10 plus a $15 licensing fee, which makes it a grand total of $25 to get this big boy out the door. That will include his microchip, his shots, and his neutering. He has not been neutered yet, so if and when he's adopted, it will take a day or so for us to schedule that and get that done, giving you a day to get your home ready and get him all the gear he's going to need, such as a deluxe dog bed. Very nice dog, gets along well with other dogs. Not real sure about cats, haven't tested him out in that arena yet. Seems to not chase after ducks, but lizards are another matter. So if you've got reptiles in your home, you might rethink this one. We did have our monsoon muttness adoption this past weekend, which was a grand success. Over 120 dogs are in new homes today. So that was a great success for many, many animals in our community. If you're unable to take a dog like Morris home, as always, we are looking for volunteers at all times. We have a wonderful group of volunteers, a wonderful volunteer program, great way to get to know other folks, great opportunity to spend some time helping the animals in our community that are in need. If you don't have time for volunteering and you do not have room in your home for an animal, we do take donations. You can go to our website at It's Pima.gov/animal care. They recently changed it, so I apologize for my forgetting that. Our facility is open from noon until 7 on weekdays, from 10 until 5 on weekends. We're located at 4000 North Silver Bell. Sit, Morris. Sit. Sit. Good boy. And you're welcome to come on down and check out the animals yourself. If you already have a dog and you're concerned about bringing a second dog into your home and concerned that they may not get along, you can always bring your dog down and we can make arrangements to introduce them to make sure it's a good match before you take them home. We don't want our dogs going to homes and coming back. That's very stressful on them. We want, when they leave our facility, for them to be going to a forever home. So please take it very seriously before you bring a pet into your home. Morris, like the rest of our animals, are very anxious to get out into homes. There is an overpopulation problem. As always, please be responsible with any pets you have or get in the future. Please have them spayed or neutered, and please make sure that they don't run loose where they could get injured, hurt somebody else, or repopulate and turn one dog into 60 in a matter of months. So as always, thank you for your time, and please consider Morris, or if somebody you know wants a dog, please tell them about Morris. He is anxious to get into a new home, and as you can see, he's pretty handsome, and he's pretty well behaved. And I'm hoping if the county does approve the raises that it seems everybody is down here to try to fit into the budget, that hopefully you can fit into your budget some donations to help out the animals in our community that need some help. So thank you.
You know, he keeps staring at Miss Padilla. I don't know what that means. It's your smile.
I think Miss Padilla is just staring back at you. Supervisor Elias?
You know, Officer Bowden's comment about this dog being handsome probably means that it's like a public safety dog, wouldn't you say?
Oh, absolutely.
There's a lot of public safety
Absolutely.
handsome faces back here. I was going to say maybe they could go home with a dog here. $25, you know, it's a pretty good deal. Seems like Morris would be a good friend for somebody or for their family and their kids. Anyways, please consider it, and please be considerate of our animal care officers. They work so hard for us, and we appreciate everything they do for us. But $25, golly, I promise you, you got a better shot at having a happy life with this dog than you do with winning the Powerball.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you, Officer Bowden. Moving on to Board of Supervisors, item number 5. I do have one speaker card that I'm going to go ahead and call up in just a moment, but I wanted Mr. Huckleberry to say a few words on item number 5.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, as per the board's direction at the last meeting when we held a long discussion with regard to transportation revenues, the board indicated that your desire to place the action items that were at least related to potentially modifications of Arizona law in a resolution that could be transmitted to the affected parties, as well as transmitted to what we call local entities or agencies that may be interested in increasing transportation investments throughout, obviously, not only Pima County, but the state, such as chambers of commerces or other interest groups within Pima County. This resolution does that and is prepared for you, specifically related to the items that impact Pima County. We will also be developing a resolution for the board's consideration in our legislative agenda, which obviously does not come before the board until October prior to the session beginning at the first of the year in January of 14. That puts these increases in impacts in a statewide perspective. So this is really a local resolution that will be followed up with our legislative agenda with a statewide implication resolution.
Mr. Chairman.
Supervisor Carroll.
Mr. Huckleberry, thank you for those insightful comments. I spoke to one of our lobbyists this morning regarding this year's legislative agenda and was there getting any resolution to a couple of items that will affect our budget hearings today. One is that we should have some restoration of funds when it comes to sexually violent prisoners. There is going to be other funds that are going to be freed up, hopefully, or less taken on the highway user revenue funds. But when it comes to this resolution, we realize that there's going to be a lot of opportunity for us to meet with our representatives individually. Some feedback I've had is that when you come to increase the state gas tax by 10 cents, would it be, I guess, in their language, more acceptable if there were to be increase the state gasoline tax by up to 10 cents. That's the only difference that the people I've spoken to in our delegation that are interested in helping. I've also spoken to the Arizona Tax, some groups in Phoenix with Arizona Federation of Taxpayers, and it seems that they're not going to be in great opposition to this effort. There's a lot of obvious interest in the governor's expansion of Medicaid. that certainly today looks like it has the votes. Those votes should continue to hold according to our people in Phoenix. So that should have less of an impact on our budget than it was originally said to. The only thing I wanted to remind people is that this weekend is the Western Regional for County Supervisors of America, NACO, National Association of County Officials. And if we could have this printed up by then, I'm sure many representatives and senators, besides staff from the state budget, as well as the governor's office, will be there. So is there any way that we could have something printed up if this is passed today, which could be brought up and then purposefully handed to those individuals that might have an impact on it?
Mr. Chairman and Supervisor Carroll, obviously, as soon as the chairman, the board executes the resolution, chairman can sign it, clerk can issue it, and we will print it this afternoon, more than likely.
And to use the language, I have the implied consent to say that it's up to 10 cents. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, it doesn't make up to 10 is fine with me.
Thank you, Mr. Huckleberry.
Mr. Chairman, since
Supervisor
we're having discussion before we make the motion this week, in Mr. Huckleberry's report on transportation, he talked about why HERF revenues are down, and one of the items he highlighted was as gas prices increased, people drove less. That resulted in less revenue for the state and therefore the county. The employees of Pima County have not had raises in 5 or 6 years, depending on who I listen to. We are now giving them a minuscule raise, 1% on July 1st and another 2% 6 months later. These are the very people on the front lines doing the business of Pima County, the Sheriff Department, the County Attorney Office, the workers in the field who make this county run. Now, in addition to the increased costs of their benefits, along with a proposed 5% increase in property taxes, and make no mistake about it, this cost will be passed along to the renters by their landlords. We are going to slap them in the face by supporting a more than 50% increase in the gas tax, which will affect those who can least afford it. As Mr. Huckleberry summarized in his recent memo, we receive close to $50 million a year in HERF revenues. The problem? We aren't spending it on road repairs. Mr. Huckleberry stated we will spend a mere $5 million on road repairs in the upcoming year, and that is the result of a proposed property tax increase. Adding this gas tax is not the solution. Cutting back our county spending is the solution. Thank you.
Other comments from the board? Yes, we have one speaker. I'm going to ask you to come up and identify yourself for the record, and you'll have 3 minutes. Robert Black.
Thank you. My name is Robert Black. I reside at 1920 West Desert Highlands Drive in Oro Valley. I want to thank each of you for the opportunity to share my thoughts and feelings regarding this issue. One of the questions I had has already been answered. I am concerned a little bit, quite a bit, about the tax increase and the impact that it's going to have on the general public. I almost didn't come here because I, like the general public, feel that there are times when you come up and speak and people often do not even listen to you. With that in mind, I'd like to make these following statements. Earlier this week on Friday, it was stated that one of the reasons for the tax increase was because people are driving Priuses and things of that nature. I don't think that's really true. For example, I drive a 1987 Cougar LS, and I commuted to Chandler every day, and it got over 25 miles per gallon. This is a 1987 vehicle. I also own and possess a 1996 Lincoln Town Car, bought used. It gets 22 miles to the gallon, and on the highway it gets over 26, and it's got a 4-point-some-odd liter engine. People have been driving cars like that for some time, and I don't think that there's that. I don't know what kind of revenues you receive, but I know that it can be researched as to the total number of gallons of fuel that is consumed by Pima County residents relative to the tax revenues that are generated. I really think that the problem doesn't rest with, and two, I have the question is, well, what happens to this revenue that's received? Does it go for roads? My understanding is, and it could be incorrect, that the taxes generated for fuel taxes are supposed to go for road improvements, both both in the state and in the city. I challenge each of you to research that and determine, well, how much of these funds that have been received really go to road improvement? It seems like there aren't too many. I have a lot of friends that have become somewhat dismayed. You know, I know each of you have a job to do. Each of you are elected in a district to represent the district, and collectively, each of you are to make the best decisions you can regarding Pima County and its revenues and its expenses. I hold each of you to that accountability, and I wonder how much of you have really considered the accountability that you have to the budget and the funds and everything else in this area. Are we raising this just to generate more funds for other areas? That's the question I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Black.
Mr. Chairman,
Supervisor Elias.
in regards to the gentleman's question about how we spend transportation money that's generated by the items that are included in this resolution, because it's a series of recommendations, but also other transportation money that we have. Just so the gentleman understands that we actually do spend transportation dollars on direct costs related to roadway improvements. Mr. Huckleberry, please give the gentleman some kind of response, because we should certainly want to reassure him and anyone else who might have those same kind of fears.
Yes, Mr. Chairman and Supervisor Elias, our highway user revenue funds allocated to the county, including the vehicle license tax, are all spent to support the operation, maintenance, and construction of the highway system in the unincorporated area, or to support transportation systems that are obligations of the county related to transit or alternative modes of travel. The county does not spend any of its highway user revenue funds on what we call law enforcement or support of the sheriff, as opposed to the state of Arizona that uses significant sums of the highway user revenue fund to support their police agency that enforces laws on the state highway system, the Department of Public Safety, or the Highway Patrol. So every dollar that the county receives in highway user revenue funds or vehicle license taxes are spent to maintain, operate, expand, and construct the the transportation system in the unincorporated area of Pima County.
Mr. Huckleberry, those are direct costs too, not any indirect costs. I mean, is there any amount of that becomes that goes into that area of indirect costs related to roads? Because if I remember correctly, most of our money goes directly to costs that are recognized as being directly related to transportation improvements. And even though you mentioned the state, which goes off and does spend money on public safety, and the Department of Public Safety with some of their highway user revenue funds, those have actually been accepted as direct costs related to transportation. I'm just saying, whether we agree with that philosophically or not, that is not something Pima County does. But I also wanted for you to comment on that issue of direct versus indirect costs as well.
Yes, Mr. Chairman and Supervisor Elias, all of our funds are spent basically on maintaining and building and operating the streets and highways, as simple as, we'll say, a traffic engineering division maintenance supervisor who goes out and changes the light bulbs and the traffic signals, or changes the timing on traffic control devices, putting up signs, striping the roads, filling potholes, or the design engineers in the Department of Transportation to design the roadway improvements, many of which have been built in the northwest side of the community, and many of which are still under construction right now. And so all of those funds are spent for those purposes. The indirect costs are simply those costs that the Department of Transportation uses in county services to support their operations, such as finance and accounting and procurement and human resources, and those items are all direct cost in doing business with regard to operating and maintaining and building a transportation system in the unincorporated area.
Mr. Chairman?
Supervisor Miller.
I'd just like to clarify that in the meeting on Friday, Mr. Huckleberry did in fact state that we are spending $5 million on road repairs in the next year, that the rest of the money, a big chunk of it is going to pay for bonds that were bonded in 1997 for road capacity improvements, and also for the direct costs of supporting the Department of Transportation and other costs associated with that. But for actual repairs, the number is $5 million. That's what you stated in the meeting on Friday. Is that correct?
I think you have to distinguish when you say repairs. Pavement preservation and resurfacing is, yes, that's what $5 million is set aside. The repairs, there's also a very large component of the Department of Transportation's budget that supports what it's called its maintenance operations division, and all of that is maintenance and repairs as well. But it's the, going out and filling the potholes and filling the cracks in the roads and putting up the signs and striping the roads. The $5 million is a general fund allocation to the pavement preservation and repair program, the resurfacing. And that's when we take an entire road and repair it and resurface it at one time, as opposed to going in and filling the potholes in a particular roadway. The general fund contributions, 3 years ago, these general fund contributions for pavement repairs were zero. And the previous year, they were roughly $15 million out of the general fund, $10 million the ending fund balance, $5 million recurring revenues. The coming year, 13-14, that's what we have in the budget as a general fund transfer for pavement repair and rehabilitation. And yes, when you talk about the traditional going in and resurfacing an entire roadway or repaving an entire roadway, that's all the money that's being spent for that particular element.
That's correct, and that is my understanding, and that's what I wanted to clarify to the public, is that the majority of those monies are going to fund the Department of Transportation budget expenses, employees, that kind of thing, and the actual pavement preservation is what is coming from the general fund to the Department of Transportation in the form of that $5 million. Because I'm getting a lot of calls from people, and I know you're going to provide a schedule of the roads that are going to be repaired. There was confusion that maybe there was $20 million out there this year. And I have to clarify to the residents in my district that there is only going to be $5 million to repair roads this year. Thank you.
Mr. Huckleberry? Ms. Miller brings up a good issue, and maybe Priscilla can help us with this. But the difference between administrative costs and actual road repairs, whatever nature, building roads or repairing roads or whatever, do we have some kind of number related to administrative costs? And what percentage that represents of the total transportation budget?
Mr. Chairman and Supervisor Elias, I think if you just simply go to the budget book, you'll see it's broken out in personal services, operating, maintenance, insurance, all the other costs. The cost of really doing business are broken out in a line item, and so you can tell that item. We do have a transfer that obviously goes to support the highway user revenue bonds, and it's expected to stay about the same as it is for the next 4 or 5 years. So I think it's all there. It's you can look at it in great detail. I
understand it's there in the book. I'm just wondering if we had that available right now, so we could have a better understanding of what percentage of administrative costs we actually talk about in the transportation budget. We can certainly do that during final budget, to have a more clear understanding of that, and I recognize those numbers are there, but I just thought it might be kind of handy-dandy for this conversation.
Mr. Chairman and Supervisor Elias, we can certainly get it for you, because I think we've answered it in another question buried in 101 pages, so I'm going to go dig it out. We'll get it. That's not a problem.
Mr. Chairman?
Supervisor Elias.
I'd go ahead and move item 5, including resolution 2013-37, and I would include Supervisor Carroll's language there of up to 10 cents, because I think that's good work, and that's my motion.
Second.
But I would also, thank you, Sharon. I would also add that, this resolution is about making a statement about what we need to do here in the state to help all the counties out of a very difficult situation that they face in properly funding road repairs throughout the state, because it becomes more and more dangerous to all of us. So I think you should take it, and the public should take it as a broad-based kind of statement about the need that needs to be addressed by us all, because in fact it's been created by all of us here in the state.
Other comments from the board?
Mr. Chairman, last week we voted on this item, and it was increasing the state gas tax by 10 cents per gallon. Are we nullifying that vote? What is going to happen with that previous vote where it was a 4-to-1 vote for the increased 10 cent per gallon increase?
This amends it.
Council?
Mr. Chairman, Supervisor Miller, I think this is a permissible amendment. I mean, it's just as if you're bringing it back on reconsideration or otherwise. At this point, I think we knew it was going to be coming back as a formal resolution, and I see no problem. It's a policy decision as to which way you want to go with this.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
I would just, by way of comment, I would only add that I think part of what we're trying to accomplish on this board is to try and send a message that whether or not this is the end solution, that we need to start having that discussion. And not only do we want to have it here, we want to have it at the state, we want to have it in Congress. We not only want to, we need to, because of the infrastructure issues we face as a nation, to be honest. So I think that's the message that we really want to get out today, is that, yeah, here are some ideas. However, the end of this this road is that we want to have that discussion begin.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree, Mr. Chairman. And I would also comment that the change to this resolution made up here at the dais via my motion really it speaks well that Supervisor Carroll reached out to some folks and talked about it. So we should respond in kind to that, I think.
All right, motion before us is on the approval of item number 5, resolution number 2013-37, with the addition, the editing of, instead of gas tax by 10 cents, up to 10 cents. All those in favor, please signify, or you know what, roll call vote.
Supervisor Bronson?
Aye.
Supervisor Carroll?
Aye.
Supervisor Elias?
Aye.
Supervisor Miller?
No.
Chairman Valadez?
Aye. By your vote of 4-to-1, motion carries. Before we move into the hearings, I do have one change to the agenda. It's on agenda page 4, item 15, Industrial Development Authority unfinished business. Correct. And it's a resolution number 2013-27. Russo, and Slania requested this item be removed from the agenda. Without objection, that will be the only change to the agenda. Hearings, tentative budget hearing. And at this point, I'm going to, Mr. Huckleberry, would you like to open up? And then I'm going to go to speakers.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, this is adoption of the tentative budget, and just to remind the board, the tentative budget process is one that sets the ceilings for which then the budget staff will advertise according to Arizona law the respective amounts and ceilings of all of the fund allocations and tax levies. The board, in adopting the final budget on June the 18th, cannot increase those levies or total allocations that are set by the tentative budget. Between the tentative budget and final allocation, the board can either reduce the proposed expenditures or transfer funds and items among various agencies or departments or areas that the board deems appropriate. So the action to adopt the tentative budget sets ceilings, but does not tie the board's hands for further reductions or transfers when adopting the final budget.
Before I go to speakers, does any member of the board have any statement? Supervisor Miller.
Mr. Chairman, I have a general statement that I'd like to read about the budget in general after last Friday's event, so do you want me to do that now? Per our discussion on May 17th, Mr. Huckleberry stated that we have not yet challenged department managers to reduce spending. Instead, we increased expenditures in this year's budget by close to $30 million. We have a communications department that came into existence 2 years ago. I think the county was functioning fine prior to this. Are we truly looking out for the taxpayer? internal departments are required to use this service versus going outside where I know I could get my business cards cheaper through an outside vendor. We're giving the Arizona Health South Hospital another $15 million again this year for subsidizing graduate medical education, and apparently the plan is to continue doing so. We have done a poor job managing and entering into contracts without terms and conditions, termination clauses to protect the Pima County taxpayers. I'll point out 2 examples. The Joint Justice Court, which the City of Tucson backed out of, costing taxpayers $22.5 million from the general fund that should have gone probably to road repairs. That was a possible use of that money. We'll be waiting for years to get repaid back. How much will the operations and maintenance of the justice courts be? This is yet another added cost for operations and maintenance for every building and new construction that we do. It'll be a recurring cost, and according the Office of Homeland Security is another example. Their cost is going to add $700,000 to $1 million per year for operations and maintenance. Stadium District will have to continue to be subsidized for $2.7 million per year. TRIO, we're still giving them $450,000 per year when it appears the individual leading this organization has a significant conflict of interest as he leads Telluride efforts to bring jobs to that community. Whether this is a volunteer effort on Mr. Snell's behalf is beside the point. TRIO has significant private funding, and the taxpayers of Pima County should not be asked to subsidize this organization, period. It is up to the private sector to continue funding this organization. Pima County has its own economic development department. And then there's $27 million in non-governmental medical consultants throughout various departments, and I still don't feel this budget has been properly reviewed by this board with challenges to reduce spending. I requested a schedule of what these charges are by department, and they are forthcoming. I have not yet had the opportunity to review them. How long before we painted ourselves into a corner such that we have very little discretionary spending? We continue allowing our infrastructure to decay. 62% of the roads in Pima County are in failed to poor condition. This is our single most important function investment as a county. This affects the safety of our children, our first responders. It affects economic development, our public image, tourism. Aren't we supposed to be the bike-friendly town? It hurts our citizens by costing them thousands each year to repair fixing their vehicles driving on these failed roads. I saw your response that not everyone is concerned about the roads. That may be true in some districts. However, 72% of the roads in District 1 are in failed to poor condition. We have metrics in place in my office, and we've been tracking them. The number 1 constituent complaint is roads. 80% of our complaints is regarding the roads. We have numerous petitions to fix roads, including some that were just turned into my office that had been turned into Pima County in 2008. And I dare say it was recognized as a significant issue last year during the election when $10 million was quickly allocated to road repairs. We continue shortchanging our employees in whom we have invested thousands via training programs, only to make this investment and watch them move on to other municipalities that offer more competitive wages. I have heard these stories from sheriff deputies, county attorney employees, and many other county employees who have taken the time to contact my office. I cannot support this budget after the brief 3.5-hour review we had on Friday, May 17th. The supervisors should have an open review with discussion among the supervisors to adequately review this budget recommendation. The county administrator has admitted there has not been a challenge to reduce spending to the department managers and suggested it is merely a maintenance budget. One example that has been held up as a best practice is what went on in the Development Services Department. They cut their staff by 2/3 in this economic downturn. We all recognize this downturn will continue for the next few years and possibly longer with all the economic uncertainty going on right now. I believe in building a budget from the bottom up with management buy-in and accountability built in. Performance measurements should be developed and owned by each department manager. This budget, in my opinion, has not been properly reviewed and vetted by the board, and this budget could be cut versus continually raising property taxes on the back of our residents who have and will continue to receive little in return for their tax dollars as the economic downturn continues. allowing our existing infrastructure to continue falling apart as we buy more assets, build more buildings, and continue adding debt is not responsible management. There are no jobs for graduating college students. The roads are terrible, and we continue spending and purchasing assets we can ill afford to operate and maintain. And as such, I will not be supporting any of the county budgets today. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Elias.
Mr. Chairman, you know, Ms. Miller's comment about the stadium district said there was about $2.7 million in subsidy that we were providing to it. Actually, isn't that figure 1.5 million from the general fund? The rest is generated by the regular revenue sources identified for that enterprise fund. And I think she brings up a good point about enterprise funds, such as development services, and that's been an effective way to control expenditures, especially in a downtime, but we've decimated that department. And at this point now, you're even suggesting that we have to spend some more general fund money over there on development services. So I agree. On the whole, I'm afraid I have to disagree with Ms. Miller in her comments about responsible management. I think Pima County has been one of the more responsible local governments in the state of Arizona during this down period that we've been going through since the end of the Bush administration. And I'm proud of the work that we've done, and I know that it's been difficult, and there's been very difficult decisions made here on this board in regards to that, and there's more difficult ones ahead of us. Probably the hardest one has been, like Supervisor Miller said, about our employees, because we do care about our employees, and they're our biggest assets, and you all are important to us, absolutely. So make no mistake about it, but in the meantime also, we've kept our heads above water. We've maintained a fund balance that has allowed us to protect the citizens of Pima County from a lot of potential harm. We are going to continue to do that, and I think this budget is a continuation of that. And perhaps the most difficult decisions came last year when we absorbed a huge loss in property valuations here in the county of Pima, in fact, the largest in the history of Pima County, and we absorbed those losses completely. So, you know, just food for thought, but I did want to check on the debt service one because I think the number was off just a hair in that one.
Supervisor Carroll?
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. Mr. Chairman, I would appreciate, first off, there's going to be hearings. We know that the final adoption is going to be for June 18th, and until that day, we certainly have reason and a choice to allocate or decrease expenditures as we see fit as a board. I don't want to step out of that process, but I do look forward to continuing the conversation, and we have until June 18th. For the record, I'd support making some items in this budget an utmost priority, and number one would be I do support the cost of living adjustment of 1% starting July of 2013 and 2% in January of 2014 for the employees. The funding for road repair, as I mentioned in an earlier meeting, I'd like to see even doubled from the $5 million from the general fund to 10. Funding for law enforcement is a priority that I believe in Mr. Huckleberry's budget. He has certainly cleared the way for the two supplemental budgets for the county attorney and the sheriff's department. One item that's yet to be resolved is something that's been haunting the county for over a decade since I've been familiar with the issue from the sheriff's department, the Fraternal Order of Police, and other recommendations and bodies that hold this issue to be a pay us now or a pay us later, and that's the sheriff's compression. The issue I'm sure could be spoken about with individual board members, and I'm sure the FOP or members of that group would be delighted to come and share. They will be coming to my office next week, Tuesday. The important thing I wanted to say about this budget is it's an accountant's budget. I'm not sure if it's a total taxpayer budget, but that'll be decided at the June 18th, 2013 meeting. The staff and the accountants have worked hard in Pima County, and I also want to thank those members of my staff, too, as well as other district offices who sat through the Q&A session. I came in on Friday and noticed that each board member's office was represented here, and I appreciated that. I thought it was a good airing and a good stand for the county administrator. I know how hard his staff worked in preparing for that Friday meeting, and I say kudos to Mr. Huckleberry, especially to his 10th floor staff for putting in the extra hours and keeping the midnight oil burning to get that stuff prepared for Friday. The obvious thing the economists are saying is that we're slowly recovering from this great recession. And the fact is that the painful, slow recovery is not over, and it could be faltering. Unemployment is at 7.9%, and we still have a danger of many houses in Pima County of being foreclosed. Medical costs are rising for all of us employees, and I'm on the same plan as you, and I understand that. We are taking better care of ourselves as a group and an employee base, and I'm proud of that. I look forward to working with the Healthy County initiatives for the next year. The efforts of the county administrator, once again, I do appreciate, but as Ms. Miller said, they fall short of, I think, what is a philosophical and ideological difference between the Republicans on the board and the Democrats. I appreciate being able to speak before the other speakers so you can put on the table what our priorities are as my office has reviewed them. And I speak only for my office in saying that I don't blame the employees or I don't blame the county administration. I do blame the economy nationally, and I do believe that we are taking steps. In fact, going towards the legislature with ideas to improve our road funding is something that I feel is taking accountability, is stepping in the right direction. So I appreciate, again, having the chance to speak. I didn't think we would before the speakers, but I'm delighted to say that I would be opposed to any tax rate, as I have been for the last 16 years when it increases, and I would be in favor of treating the employees, especially those in law enforcement and the first responders, a little better in this budget. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Mr. Huckleberry.
Any other comments? All right, just for the record, just so we know, all the hearings are open at this point on all the budgets, and I'm going to go ahead and start. They're all on the agenda. They're the Flood Control District Board, Improvement District Board. Would you like me to read them in detail? No. I think Mr. Burke would like to. All right. Moving on. I've got a number of speakers, so let me start off with Judge Kenneth Lee. Please come up, identify yourself for the record, and you have 3 minutes.
Thank you. My name is Kenneth Lee. I'm the Associate Presiding Judge over at the Superior Court. I'm here on behalf of Judge Simmons. She couldn't be here this morning, but she wanted to extend her thanks to the Board for considering the budgets that we submitted. So the first thing that she wanted me to convey is that she wanted to thank the Board for your past treatment of the courts over the past probably 5 or 6 years. Given the budget crisis that we've all faced, I think the court's been treated, and she believes the court's been treated as fairly as possible given the budget constraints you've had over the past few years. And she wanted to convey her thanks to your treatment of the courts. With respect to, I guess, the big issue this morning that we're all going to be talking about, and you'll be hearing from a number of departments, is the employee raises. And with that respect, the court simply would like that the court employees be treated the same as the other county employees, with the 1% and then the 2%. We've also submitted to you a supplemental package with respect to probation officers, surveillance officers, and juvenile detention officers. Kent Batty, who is more involved in that aspect of the budget, and Judge Adam are going to be addressing those. Again, I wasn't intimately familiar with the budget process, and so if you have any questions, I'll probably defer those over to Mr. Batty. But again, thank you for your consideration of our positions.
Mr. Chairman, Judge, I want to assure you that Judge Simmons did make the rounds. She came on Friday. Yeah. We understand that she's taking some much needed time off right now, so we appreciate you representing her today. But we went through your budget, and certainly she has a great handle on it, and I look forward to hearing from Mr. Batty. Thank you, though, Judge, for being here today.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for the judge? Thank you, Judge. Next, I'm going to call Ken Battier. Please come up, identify yourself for the record, and you have 3 minutes.
Good morning. I'm Kent Batty. I'm the Superior Court Administrator. Thank you, Chairman Valadez, and thank you, other members of the Board of Supervisors and Mr. Huckleberry for giving us this opportunity to speak. To build on some things that have already been said, especially by Judge Lee, I really appreciate the diligence that the Board has shown in the last 6 years in dealing with the economic crisis that they've faced and Mr. Huckleberry's role in that. I echo some of the comments that have already been made. I do think that this board has led this county to probably the best financial position they could possibly be in given the crisis we've come through. I have great appreciation for the efforts that you folks have to make in figuring out where to spend scarce dollars. And I recognize, as as Supervisor Miller suggested, we may not be out of the woods yet on the economy, but things are turning around. I also believe, I don't know, Mr. Huckleberry, if you have measures of this, but I also believe any survey would show that we're probably one of the best in the region in terms of our financial standing and how we manage this with minimal impact on services to the public and with a reduced impact compared to other entities on our employees. And we are, as Judge Lee suggested, supportive of any effort the board can make to improve employee compensation. We feel that it needs to be addressed, as many of you do, I think, as one of the county's and the court's highest priorities. We wholeheartedly support Mr. Huckleberry's proposal for across-the-board increases, but we also feel that more needs to be done. We have worked with Mr. Huckleberry for several months. Judge Simmons and Judge Adam, who is here also with Steve Rubin, the director of the juvenile court, have met with Mr. Huckleberry to work through our compensation concerns. We have used a survey called the Arizona Compensation Survey, which is a survey of more than 200 employers, both public and private, to gather data on our positions, and we believe that that data shows that we still have a number of positions that even with the across-the-board increase will be out of sync with the market, if you will, not market competitive. So we believe that we need to start addressing those problems, and we want to start with some of our most valuable positions, that is probation officers, surveillance officers, and judicial detention officers. When the judges, that is, spoke with Mr. Huckleberry about this, he suggested that we should consider using, for comparison purposes, Maricopa County, Pinal County, and Yuma, as those are our primary competitors for both attracting and retaining these kinds of positions, as well as other positions for the court. And then after examining our data, he suggested that we present this all as a supplemental request to you, the members of the board. I want to speak for a minute to the need for these market increases. I do know, of course, that a sufficient across-the-board increase could essentially dispose of all the market-related issues. However, our examination of certain positions, in particular these three that I've mentioned, the three series of positions, is not sufficient to get them to market. I'm going to ask Mr. Newsmer if he will distribute some handouts. One is simply a reissuance of our executive summary that you already have, but I thought it might be good to put it in your hands again. And the second shows a specific comparison about the standing of these three series of classifications with regard to other positions.
Mr. Batty, how much longer is your presentation? Because you've already exceeded your 3 minutes.
Oh, I thought I was on Judge Lee's time. I'm sorry. I didn't see the clock restart when I came up here, Chairman Valadez. Okay, I'm sorry.
If you could please summarize them.
I will. Why we want to focus on these positions. We have clearly comparable market data that shows these positions are well behind the salaries of the counties with which we compete. Mr. Newsmer is handing that to you now. We also rank in the bottom third in these positions of all counties in Arizona. As you all know well, these positions serve the public. They serve public safety. They are safety-sensitive positions. They also serve as JDOs in the rehabilitation role that those officers serve in dealing with our juvenile offenders. We need high-performing, highly capable individuals, and we don't believe we can compete or treat our employees fairly without giving them better enhancements through specific market adjustments. And I'll just leave it at that.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question. What's your attrition rate with those positions?
Our attrition rate overall?
No, with those positions.
With those types of positions? I do have that. It runs between Overall, for those positions, it runs between 15 and 20%.
And what's in comparison to Maricopa, Yuma, Pinal?
In terms of attrition?
Yeah, do you have those numbers?
Chairman Valadez, Chairman Supervisor Bronson, I don't have those numbers. I'm
I'd
sorry.
be interested if you could get me.
We'll see if we can get
before
those.
final budget adoption. Thank you.
Certainly.
Supervisor Miller?
Mr. Chairman, may I ask a question?
Please.
Is the attrition rate, that 15 to 20%, is that an annualized basis?
That was Supervisor Valadez, Supervisor Miller. I believe that was our attrition rate for the last year,
Okay, thank you.
2012.
Any other questions? Supervisor Elias?
Well, while we have Mr. Batty up here, I know that, he gave his statement about this particular supplemental package and stuff. But let's talk about the courts building some, because that seems to be an issue here in this budget as well. So what are your reflections on us working to complete that building? How important is it to the operation of the courts? How many cases do we hear over there in justice courts? I think last time I remember the number being around 289,000 cases a year. If my memory serves, I don't know, it falters from time to time. But
Chair
I'm pretty sure
Valadez.
that was pretty close to the number.
Excuse me.
sorry.
I hear a ringer. I've
Yeah,
asked you
I hear it
once,
again.
to turn it off. If there are any other ringers that go off, I'm going to ask Sergeant at Arms to please escort you out of the hearing room. I'm sorry, both of you. Please proceed.
Please.
Thank you, Chairman Valadez.
That's pretty much the
Supervisor
gist of my
Elias.
questions. Just to get some reflection on you, because this is a lot of money that we're shuffling around here, and it, there's already been some comments made about it. Maybe Mr. Huckleberry can comment on that after Mr. Batty finishes. Because now that we got you here, let's do it.
Well, despite the fact that I'm not among those that will be moving to that building, I have quite some knowledge of that building, as I believe it was 9 years ago, was it not, Chuck, that we formed the committee to do that? In terms of its value to the community, I think it is essential, both for the Justice Court and, quite frankly, for the City Court. And I share in the disappointment that I feel here and in county administration in the fact that the city can't find a way to move its people in there. Our county courthouse, the Pink Courthouse, as we commonly refer to it, is a beautiful facility, but we all know that it is too old to serve the needs of the public, to serve the needs of the court. And the Justice Court has been in multiple facilities for some years, which is extremely difficult to administer. So moving the Justice Court to that facility is absolutely essential and will provide much better service to the community, to the county itself, for all of us. In terms of the total caseload, Supervisor Elias, I don't believe it's quite that, quite that high. I don't have the numbers either in my head. I thought it was somewhere under 200,000, but I do, as you perhaps tend to lose track because of the number of ordinance and traffic violations that they handle. So the number that may stick in my head may be related to that. But
Chuck's probably going to know that number and make us both look bad, Cameron.
Well, I know. Well,
I know.
You didn't have to tell me that. In terms of the overall impact of that building, I believe it stands as a real will stand for us in the future as a real symbol for justice as administered by those limited jurisdiction courts. I know that county administration is in a very difficult situation now, trying to find out how to accommodate a structure that we have that will be not much more than half full, if that, and he's working very hard to make good use of that facility. And I do think it's deplorable that we can't have filled that facility right away.
But in reality, just a comment, is, the building directly east of us here, Superior Court, a number of those floors stayed empty for a number of years and served us very well. Smart dollars to spend because they become a lot more expensive into the future. And I got to tell you, courthouses now cost more to build per square foot than hospitals. So we have some serious issues related to this. And what I'm saying is that even if that courthouse is not fully occupied by justice courts and the other operations we move over there, those are important dollars to spend now, and I think this board has been judicious in that. Mr. Huckleberry, you have some that you want to add to that, because this is a big issue.
Yes,
There's a lot of money involved here.
Mr. Chairman, a couple of points. One is that obviously we
Thank you.
need to transition our services to the new facility. It will provide for efficiencies that are not capable of being accomplished today because of the type of facility it's in, its age, and the fact that we even have the court split into now 2 facilities. And so not only is it difficult for the folks who work in that building and the judges who are trying cases, it's also a nightmare for the public to know which building they're supposed to go to. Our biggest concern on the old courthouse is that it's very difficult to secure. And so it's an issue of security, and we think that's important. The courts have, I think, and Mr. Batty indicated, he participated in that process for 9 to 10 years with the city of Tucson, sitting side by side, telling us what they ought to have and what they want. And it's very, very unfortunate that they pulled out. But we have to deal with the hand we're dealt, and that's what we're doing right now. The good part about the justice courts is that they've agreed to impose a facilities fee on future cases that get filed in that court. While it's going to be not a lot, it's going to be something that's contributing back to repaying the extra expense that the county's having to go through with regard to that facility. So I think these are kind of things that happen in life, and it happened to us, and now we have to deal with it, and we're dealing with it, and I think everybody's actually working together and cooperating.
All right, if there are no further questions, I'm going to go ahead and move to the next speaker, and that's Judge Karen Adam. Judge, if you could please come up, identify yourself for the record. You have 3 minutes.
Good morning, and thank you very much, Chairman Valadez, members of the board, Mr. Huckleberry. I want to echo what Judge Lee said and express my gratitude to the board for being so supportive of the work that we do at the juvenile court. Obviously, both courts deal with major issues affecting all citizens of Pima County, and we are dealing with the most vulnerable, the children and families whose lives have been, in fact, dramatically affected by the economy, as has been alluded to by members of the board this morning. So while we've seen a dramatic decrease in the number of delinquency or criminal justice cases, we've seen a huge increase in the number of child welfare cases. And thanks to the support of the board and the various finance folks over at the county, we've been able to successfully resource shift in our staff so that the number of folks working in detention and probation is down, and the number of folks working with our Child and Family Services Division is increased to support the effort to do better by children and families who are brought to us, not voluntarily, but because of the problems they're suffering, largely because of substance abuse, poverty, lack of support, and so forth. We're grateful. Again, we are asking as well, since our budget is separate, but we completely join in the Superior Court position, that the employees at juvenile court be treated the same as the county regarding the cost of living increase and the one-time, it's not called bonus in the official paperwork, but I'll refer to that as a shorthand. I wanted to also just point out to you that we've made efforts at the court to reduce our costs. I looked at the data from 2005 through now. We've reduced greatly the cost of administration. We're continuing to look at streamlining administration and providing additional support in those areas of the court that are providing direct service to children and families. We continue to work diligently to do the best evidence-based, science-based work we can. In fact, today at the juvenile court is a training for over 300 folks on trauma. We are looking to become a trauma-responsive court to make sure that we recognize trauma in our adults, in our children, in fact, in ourselves, and that make sure that we are providing the services that we can for all who are affected by trauma, not re-traumatize people, and demand the same from our service providers. I'm going to defer to Court Administrator Steve Rubin, the specific details, obviously, because the juvenile probation officers are included in the supplemental discussed by Mr. Batty and Judge Lee. Judge Rubin, Steve Rubin, I told everyone when he got hired that they couldn't call him judge anymore, and then I'm the worst offender. Steve will be talking about the specific details of the supplemental, but I'm happy to answer questions.
Does anyone have questions? Supervisor Carroll.
Mr. Chairman, first off, Judge, I wanted to say that Judge Simmons also went through the juvenile court budgets, but I wanted to compliment you. I recently heard you on the Buckmaster show, and I think he podcasts those, so anybody interested can find you on buckmaster.com, I'm sure. But it was great to hear that your bed count is down,
Yes.
that you're doing preventative work, and it's showing great results. So the reduction, if you could tell us a little bit more about that, it would be appreciated. I think, first off, you communicated well on that show. I suspect that that was arranged through our own department, and you responded, and I thought it was well done.
Thank you very much, Supervisor Carroll. It's a long story, the reduction in detention, but I'll say that it was a collaborative effort that began in 2004. We reduced our average daily population in detention from 187 to 28. We're at 28. Last night we've been hovering less than 35 for the last few weeks, which is extraordinary. We had to work with everybody, the schools, the police, and so forth, because you have to stop the referrals farther up the chain than at us. Once they come to us, we have to deal with the folks who are with us. But we continue to work, especially on what we're doing regarding disproportionate minority contact. We're working on a governor's grant to develop a model for assessing why children of color have disparate results in certain aspects of the work we do. So we continue doing it. We're not resting on our laurels. We want to keep it at 28 or below, but we continue to do that work. Thank you for your compliments.
Well, I
and for
can just
asking.
recall when Mr. Huckleberry first went out to build the expansion of the juvenile center, how we were at risk of housing some juveniles with adults in those days.
Yes.
So whatever you're doing to keep that trend in the right direction, we appreciate. Thank you for your hard work. Certainly been out, and I agree that there's a disproportionate amount of racial minorities in our facilities from beginning to end, and thank you for the work that you're doing to help create more justice in our community.
Great, thank you very much, and we are very grateful to the board for supporting our efforts.
Other questions from the board?
Mr. Chairman, I'd just like to thank Judge Adam for her work too. I've worked closely with her since she came on over there at juvenile court, and with others in this effort to reduce the number of kids that we've had. I've been on various incarnations of executive committees and one court steering committees, and we even forget all the acronyms. We've had so many because we've really worked hard at trying to create some good outcomes. The important, thank you, Ray, for your comments, but I think that it's very important to note that while this reduction in the number of people that we have in detention at our juvenile court facilities has not affected the amount of juvenile crime in our community. Our kids are good kids, and we believe in them. And understanding trauma and the work that your folks are doing today at that workshop is incredibly important to us. And I just hope you're not traumatized by coming here downtown and dealing with all the traffic changes. Some people tend to feel like they go crazy in their cars as they're driving around. If they do, if you start to feel that way, call me, Judge. I'll talk you down. It's all good. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Supervisor. There'll be a lot of well-trained people when we go back who can deal with us. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I had a general question for Mr. Huckleberry. It's regarding the courts administrator has reduced headcount. And overall, since 2005, what has happened to the headcount for Pima County in general? Has it been reduced?
Mr. Huckleberry?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, Supervisor Miller, probably over 1,000 FTEs since that time frame. Mostly through the divestiture of certain lines of business and healthcare side, but in general, the county has undergone, and no department has been immune except one has been given a lesser standard, reduced their budget since 2010, probably 9 and 10, by about anywhere from 12% to 15%, and that's reduced the number of FTEs. The sheriff was given relatively a low standard to achieve in reductions. Over that time period, they only have been required to reduce their budget by 2.5%, and just simply because of the essential mission of law enforcement.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you, Judge.
Thank you very much.
Let me call Mr. Stephen Rubin. Please come up. You have 3 minutes, and obviously the board will have questions for you following your 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Mr. Huckleberry. As just so you know, Supervisor Elias, I drove Judge Adam down here so to reduce the level of trauma that she would be suffering due to the roads. Any time. I'm here specifically to address the issue of the supplemental that we've requested, as alluded to and discussed to some degree by Mr. Batty, regarding our probation officers, juvenile detention officers, and supervisors, and surveillance officers. We've asked for a supplemental based on the market study that Mr. Batty discussed. That would be a charge on the general fund in the amount of $622,163. And we recognize that this is not a really good time to talk about spending a lot of money, given the economy and the discussion. But we have seen a tremendous loss of resources in our court. We put a lot of money into hiring and training the best people that we can find. We get them trained, they become competent at their work, and then they leave. And they leave to Pinal County, and they leave to Yuma County, and they leave to the federal government, and they leave, and we start over. The ranking of our county, our juvenile court is the 4th largest court system in the state, and we rank very low, almost at the very bottom in some areas in terms of compensation for these positions. We totally support Mr. Huckleberry's recommended increase and award, but we really think now is the time to at least talk about this market adjustment for these positions. And so we're just here to advocate for that, recognizing the difficulty of finding the money in the budget. This is the first year that I've been responsible for this budget on my own. I've learned a lot from Mr. Huckleberry about trimming the budget and about not expanding the size of government. And you will note in our regular budget requests that we have, in fact, done that. We have trimmed positions in administration. We're carefully reevaluating our positions in terms of some that are classified too high, and reclassifying them downward in order to try to keep the budget at a level position and not seek any additional positions. And we appreciate Mr. Huckleberry's help with that over the last year or so. That's all I've got.
Questions from the board? Supervisor Bronson.
Yeah, I am, as we've experienced this economic downturn, I'm curious, your funding or the funding for our courts comes from several different categories. Some of
Yes.
it comes from the state. How has this, how has your state funding been affected during this economic downturn? What has your funding, I assume, hasn't been increased, so how has it been affected?
Thank you, Supervisor Bronson. Mr. Chairman, Supervisor Bronson. The state funding, the Administrative Office of the Court funding for our probation department has steadily decreased. The state looks at capacity of probation compared to number of children, as opposed to looking at the quality of the work that's being done. So there's constant pressure from the state to eliminate positions and take positions. And they've taken, I think the number is, 4 positions or 5 within the last 6 months they've taken from us in juvenile intensive probation. Those are primarily the positions they fund for our highest risk kids. And those are the positions that are being cut. So it's been significant.
And I guess that was my point. They're not rewarding you for your performance. It's just the opposite.
That's correct.
And that's very problematic.
It is. It's very frustrating, and it's a fight I and others continue to fight with the AOC around those issues. But it hurts. It's hard. This is a big county geographically, and a couple of the positions they take are surveillance officer positions who are responsible for monitoring the highest risk kids who are in the community on intensive probation. And they cut those positions, and we have one surveillance officer who's responsible for covering the entire county, and it's definitely problematic.
And that ultimately, the decision on what gets cut is made by AOC as opposed to any statutory. I mean, it is an internal administrative decision.
Correct.
And we've got a county that's over 9,400 square miles, and we simply just trying to get from one end of it to the other, as opposed to some of the smaller counties in northern Arizona. Is there any suggestions you have? We can advocate on your behalf with AOC. Well, I'll leave it at that.
Well, we're trying very hard to do that. I mean, any advocacy that would get them to move away from this capacity discussion would certainly be helpful to us. Most of the chief probation officers, the juvenile court directors in the state are pushing hard with AOC to change that formula. It's very complicated politically as well, due to the legislature looking to the courts to find some funding, to sweep some funding. So that's also an issue. But thank you for the question. On the upside, our grant, we're very good at getting grants. So on the upside, our grant funding has increased and is holding right around $9 million a year. Thank you. Thank you for listening.
Any other questions from the board? Supervisor Carroll?
I would just comment real quick before you go, Rick. What Steve just said there is very important too. Everybody else in the business, and quite honestly, public safety is the biggest place where we've seen these drops in grants. That has not happened there. So what he says is true. While they have not dropped any, that's a big statement, because most people have dropped dramatically in the amount of grants that they receive in the area of public safety.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman,
Supervisor Carroll.
I believe the only danger in seeking those grants is that they do slide away from you. First year you pay 25, second year 20, 50, and so on. So there's a sliding scale that I think we have to plan for when seeking grants to measure the impact in future they'll have on your bottom line. Is there any?
We're very aware of that, and we've had conversations in the past with Mr. Huckleberry about that, and we've been very fortunate.
Thank you.
With the grant funding.
Appreciate it. Thank you, Judge.
Thank you.
Let me call Terry Parrish. Please come up, identify yourself for the record. You have 3 minutes.
Hi, my name's Terry Parrish. I'm a sergeant with the Pima County Sheriff's Department. I'm here today talking kind of on behalf of the Deputy Association and the Fraternal Order of Police, who are pretty unified by what's been going on here in Pima County and basically across the nation. First thing, I was also a council member in Oro Valley for 4 years, so I sympathize with the decisions and the struggles of your job, and we appreciate your service. And a lot of times we hear that said to us, but we really do appreciate your service and appreciate the attention that has been given to our issues regarding the budget to date. However, one of the things I wanted to talk about very quickly is the market. And you've heard it from the court system as far as public safety, and it's really beginning to be an impact in our agency as well, because you've got agencies like Buckeye, Mesa, Phoenix PD, and now Maricopa County that are actually offering a signing bonus of $20,000, and dependent on the agency between $55,000 and $65,000 to our deputies. Like I said, I'm a sergeant. I'm topped out. You guys can't decompress me. All you can do is give me the 3% that you are doing for the rest of the employees, and I appreciate that. But our deputies need to be decompressed if we plan on keeping them. And that is directly a public safety issue. Not that we wouldn't hire new ones, but it takes a year to get a deputy off of FTO. And then another year or so for that deputy to become really a competent deputy, working on their own and being able to be on their own without any extra supervision. So it's a direct public safety issue when we start losing veteran officers. And you've got deputies that have been in their position now for several years without a raise, and for a long time without a decompression. It's been, I think, 6 years since we've had a raise. I heard the comment earlier, since we've had a raise. And frankly, the 3% this year is not going to, it's not a lot of money if you're a deputy. They're making less than $50,000 a year. So do the math. When you get 3%, it's nothing. It's $1,500 before taxes. So that's a pretty hard market when you're looking at a $20,000 bonus. You don't own a home, and maybe you've got a young family that started, you're renting or whatever. So I thank you for your time. I hope that you keep considering that and keep working towards preserving our department, because I'm here really talking about the Pima County Sheriff's Department protecting us as an agency, because that protects the county and that protects the citizens, and some of those citizens are my family.
Mr. Chairman.
Supervisor Carroll.
Councilman.
Yes, sir.
It's good to see you again. I saw Terry at the county fair earlier this year, and many other off-duty helping at the county fair. Appreciated the talk we had then. I know you'd never leave Pima County because it's a family tradition. I was a great friend of your father, Lieutenant Parrish. How's he doing?
He's good. He's living in Sholo now.
He's a great man and a good man. The question I have for you is, and this is not, I'm just wondering if it cuts both ways. Are we poaching folks from Santa Cruz, from smaller departments? Are we hanging out our open sign? Is our blue light on for people who might be coming up this direction that think Pima County is going to give more action, a little more money, better uniforms or facilities or equipment? Do we see any influx from smaller counties in the region, other departments or jurisdictions in the region, even other law enforcement related, not sheriff deputies or police officers, but those that are halfway to the training point? Do you see any hope on that? Are we available?
Mr. Chairman and Supervisor Carroll, we've been very well treated by our agency, and the leadership, frankly, has done a great job of helping us with things like uniforms and keeping morale as high as it can be during what we've been through. And we have in the past, I think, the market was more in our favor in those days, and we had done a pretty good job of seeing people from smaller agencies coming up to us. But frankly, right now, we're not competitive. Mm-hmm. And all you have to do is just look to Maricopa County and an agency in Maricopa County, and we're pretty near the bottom of the pile. And so right now, it's a great department. I'll never work anywhere else. If you're not in any danger of me leaving, I might disappoint some. But but it is something that it really is going to impact our department, and it's starting now. And I don't know why the market's so much better there, mm-hmm. but it's a fact of life. And it's starting now, and they're actively recruiting our deputies.
Well,
Mr.
sir,
Chairman.
pardon me. Sir, I just would like to invite you, as I have the other members with the FOP, if you'd like to have some time to discuss. We're not sure exactly what this compression issue would cost. Some say $4, some say $6 million. I'm not sure, but I would love to have your input, and my number is 740-8094. Give us a call. 724-8094 is our new prefix. I guess I need to be better trained, but it's, you know where to find me. Look forward to talking to you. Thank you so much for being here, and you look good.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Parrish.
Mr. Chairman, I had a question for Mr. Parrish.
Mr. Parrish, I'm sorry. I wrote it down and then, sorry.
It's okay. How much is the cost of training these officers? How much do we invest? And then at what point are we seeing these officers being recruited out of the county?
Mr. Chairman and Supervisor Miller, I don't have that information for you as far as the cost goes. I know that the time, being only a sergeant, that's not something I've ever had to address. But I can tell you that the time, the amount of effort that we put into these deputies, and the education, and frankly, once you get past the education, which takes a year, once you get past that, then you've got the experience level that's necessary to get them from being that young and proud deputy to the more congenial and wiser deputy that we need them to be to work properly with the public. And so that's really what I'm talking about as far as the time. As far as the recruiting stuff has really just started. And I don't know if it's because the fiscal year is right around the corner and now agencies know what they're going to have. but it has really begun in earnest. And frankly, they're hitting us as far away as Ajo. I was just there working another off-duty type of gig, and they were there recruiting our deputies there, and that's a hard place to fill spots. Buckeye specifically that day, but Mesa's been there, as well as Phoenix PD. So this is something that's going on right now, and I know that you guys care about the county and the public safety, and it's something you need to be aware of because it's real. Thank
I
you.
would like an update on those figures of the cost of training a deputy and how much it's costing the county when we're losing these deputies that we've invested in.
I will get that for you.
Training and of course all of the hours of training. But in addition to that, I assume you spend a lot of money investing in equipment and that type of thing, uniforms, that type of thing for each of the officers. So if you have that information, that would be very helpful. Thank
I'll
you.
retrieve it for you. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, Supervisor Miller. I wrote you down and then forgot. Next, I'd like to call Catalina Campos Llamas. Please come up, identify yourself for the record, and you have 3 minutes.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Board of Supervisors, I want to thank you for your time. And I'm here today.
Please identify yourself for the record. I'm sorry.
My name is Catalina Llamas, and I live in 1803 South Santa Cruz Lane in South Tucson.
Thank you.
And I'm happily here today to thank you for your support to Pima Community College of Adult Education. I have been a student in this adult education school, and I want to thank you because without your support, I could not do my GED. I just finished my GED, and I want to thank you for that. And I also want to invite you cordially to go to my graduation ceremony at the music hall at 7 o'clock tomorrow evening. And I would like to ask you to keep in mind adult education because it is very, very important, this program, because this program helps us to learn English, to improve our lives, and as we learn ourselves, we also help others to rise with us. And I want to thank you for your support, and we hope to see you. I hope to see you in the graduation tomorrow. And by the way, the parking lot is $8. So we got all the information, and I thank you, God, for all your lives. Thank you very much. And I think like I was telling you, this program help us to integrate ourselves in this community. And I believe that this city of Tucson is a beautiful city because we have a wonderful board of supervisors. And I'm very, very thankful to be here, and I always have in mind to invite you to my graduation. I'm just one of 1,400 students only here in Pima Community College of Adult Education. Thank you very much. And I ask you again to keep adult education in mind because it's a very good program that helps people to come back to studies after they drop out, help mothers to improve their lives. And we do a lot of things, like in this time that I have been a student in adult education, I earn a lot of certificates, but the most I like, because I like to help people. I've been working as a caregiver for almost 20 years here in Tucson, but I also earned my certified nurse assistant and patient care technician certificate. And I would love to others succeed like me. Thank you very much.
Thank
God
you.
bless you all.
Supervisor Elias? Hold on, please. Supervisor Elias?
Yes. I just wanted to say thank you for coming up. I know it takes a lot of courage to get up and make a speech sometimes here in these circumstances, but you did an outstanding job of highlighting some very important features of adult education here in our community and what it can do for people. Your work as a caregiver is incredibly important for us. And Pima County used to be involved in that work, so we know exactly what it's about, that it's highly private, it's highly personal,
Yes.
but a professional with the right attitude and the right kindness and compassion can make all the difference in the world. But your ascension into the world of being a healthcare worker is something you should be very proud of and serves our community well. And these are important jobs for us. Despite the fact that adult education was decimated by the state in the last few years, you have continued your work and your organization has continued your work. Now I'm very proud of that and appreciate what you do. And I'm very proud to have a District 5 resident like you come up and give such a profound talk to us about it.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
But it's my pleasure. I was born to help people, and I continue doing that.
Good
And
for
I
you.
want to thank you, my leaders, and my friends, and my students that are here to support me, and all the way that they have supported me in my school. Thank you.
Thank you.
Very good.
Next, I'd like to call on Mr. Robert Black. Please come up, identify yourself for the record, and you have 3 minutes.
Thank you very much. Again, my name is Robert Black. I reside at 1920 West Desert Highlands Drive in Oro Valley. I want to share a couple thoughts that I have regarding the budget. Recently, I retired, and all through my working career, what I had to do was I didn't have a golden parachute or a huge pension plan or anything like that, but I had to manage it, and I had to work hard, do my best, and save. With that in mind, I want to share some information that I obtained. I don't care whether counties or cities are incorporated or not, but if you look at the population of Maricopa County and the number of dollars, it's $2,278,000,000 is spent, and you divide that out, you get about $587 per capita. In Pima County, if you do the same thing, you get about $1,287 per capita. Now, I live in Oro Valley, and I know that it's not incorporated, but they have a budget. They have $9.8 million in reserves of a $28,300,000 budget. Their per capita equivalent of that is around $687. Now, when I look at this, I ask, as a citizen, how efficient is Pima County with their funds? You'd have to decrease to match Maricopa, your budget by 43%. You'd have to match Oro Valley, which is not incorporated into the city of Tucson, your budget by 52%. With this, I have this question. Why would any individual or potential company want to locate in Tucson, Pima County, with such inefficiencies? And it's obvious, to me at least, that Pima County is not budgeting in compliance with the revenue sources available. Many of the areas, I've looked at the budget, many of the areas that I've looked at, basically the revenues are insufficient for the expenditures. I have to get rid of things that I would like to have and substitute the things that I need to get by. Why can't Pima County do that? Another thing, process and feedback from the community is important for the events of June 17th and all decisions of the Board of Supervisors that they're going to make regarding the budget. Economic downturn, why the citizens, we hear that a lot from the Board of Supervisors. We've all had to deal with that. I've had to deal with that, and I have to manage my retirement years based upon the information I have about my income and other things. I don't have a big, nice car. I have older cars. I am not looking to blame anyone, but I'm just wanting to see some kind of ownership from the Board of Supervisors regarding the budget and the revenue that's available. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Black. Next, I'm going to call Caleb Rhodes. Please come up, identify yourself for the record. There you are. And you have 3 minutes, Mr. Rhodes.
Mr. Chairman, honorable members of the board, my name is Caleb Rhodes. I am 17 years old and I'll be attending the University of Arizona in the fall. And I'm here to share with you the concerns that many young people in the county have about what is happening with this board. We're looking out with my friends that will be graduating the University of Arizona, maybe going to medical school, looking forward to the future. And I will tell you one thing that unites them. They're not looking at Pima County for a future. They are coming here, getting an education at one of the best universities in the state, and they're leaving. They're going to Phoenix or Mesa, or they're leaving the state because there are not the job opportunities here that they need. When you spend 4 years, thousands of dollars on an education, you want to be able to find a good, high-paying job in the community. And those jobs just are not here. At the same time, the board is considering yet another tax increase on our businesses. My own family has lived here for over 25 years, and they're struggling to make ends meet. My families and their friends are struggling just to get by, and the board is considering yet another tax increase. This is going to drive away more businesses. This is going to make it harder for our already struggling residents just to make it by. At the same time, we're spending $27 million on consultants. Why are we not cutting spending? I asked the board, is there not an area that we can look at to cut in a time of such economic recession? My family's done it. I've had to do it when not making my decisions on where to live during campus. And if we're going to have a bright future, we have to be promoting businesses. We have to be creating an atmosphere that is friendly for businesses to come here so that myself and my friends will want to stay in this community. And I asked the board, why are we not doing these things? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rhodes. Any questions from the board? All right, thank you. I'd like to call up Dan Lastisa. Please come up, sir. Identify yourself for the record, and you have 3 minutes.
My name is Dan Elestiza. I live in Oro Valley. I'm here to talk about the property taxes. I've lived in 4 states where I've owned properties in the past: California, Maryland, Colorado, and here. This state is the highest as far as property tax rates go that I've ever encountered. Last year, I bought a property up in Dove Mountain. I paid a little over $100,000. I got the tax bill this year, it was $8,000. I was just shocked at that. And so what I'm here for is the intent of Prop 117, which was worded wrong, was to try to control the property taxes. But it's being proven that it's going to be circumvented by raising different rates and stuff like that. So I'm just wondering, when does it end? I mean, is it going to take like a Prop 13 from California to just stabilize everything? Because I'm worried when I build a house, I'm not going to be able to afford the property taxes on the lot I bought. And that's all I have.
All right, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Next, I'd like to call Maya Castillo. Please come up, identify yourself for the record, and you have 3 minutes.
Maya Castillo, President, SEIU Arizona. You've seen me before many times with many county employees imploring you to address the wage increase in the coming year's budget, and also describing to you not only the challenges we face as county employees at home, but in providing good services in Pima County. I'm here today to thank you for taking some steps to address these issues. I'd also like to make a few suggestions and consider some options that keep the county within the current budget constraints. For example, a 2% wage increase in July and 3% in January. 1% in July, 2% in January, and an additional 41 cents across the board in July. Or 3% in July and 40 cents across the board in January. Additionally, I'd like you to really start thinking about adjusting the pay scales along with cost of living increases. It's common practice in other jurisdictions, and it's something that is a small step toward alleviating some of the compression issues that you've heard about today and at other meetings. The currently proposed lump sum acknowledges something that we do all agree on, the need to boost our lowest earners in a meaningful way. There are some drawbacks and some concerns that employees have about this. One concern for many is the high tax rate for bonuses. It's approximately 25% depending on the method of calculation and can be more. Additionally, what I've heard from employees is that so many people are so far behind that that lump sum may only help them for a month, maybe 2. And what folks are more interested in is something that is an ongoing, will help them in the long run. I talked to an employee who is a SEIU member, who is a part-time employee, whose husband is unemployed. And she told me she was excited to hear about the lump sum, but that excitement only lasted about 30 seconds, because then she realized, okay, that money is going to help us pay off this credit card debt that we've incurred and just living normal day-to-day expenses, getting her kids to school and feeding them. I'd like you to make a commitment to making employees whole over the long term and explore more across the board options. Thank you.
Are there any questions? Thank you. All right, that ends my speaker cards. Is there anyone else here who would like to address the board at any of the budgets? If not, I'm going to go ahead and take a 10-minute break, and then we'll start the discussions up, and we will return at the sound of the gavel. Back to order. We are at tentative budget hearing. Does the board have any comments on the budget in general, or do we move through the separate budgets? Separate budgets then.
Separate budgets.
Okay. Tentative Board of Supervisors sitting as other boards, Flood Control District Board, item number 7.
Mr. Chairman, under Flood Control District Board, item number 7, I move that we adopt the tentative budget at the level recommended by the county administrator of $12,624,028 with a tentative tax rate of 0.2635.
Motion and a second to approve item number 7 and to close the public hearing on the
I forgot to add that.
on
My
the Flood Control District
apologies.
Board budget, and to adopt it at $12,624,028 for an effective tax rate of 0.2635. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, or please roll call vote.
Supervisor Bronson.
Aye.
Supervisor Carroll.
No.
Supervisor Elias.
Aye.
Supervisor Miller.
No.
Chairman Valadez.
Aye. By your vote of 3-2, motion carries. Moving to Improvement District Board number 8, Supervisor Bronson.
Mr. Chairman, I would just make the comment, or perhaps Mr. Johnson or someone, Tom, you could, with Improvement District Boards, just for the benefit of the audience, these amounts are set how and why are we doing them?
Mr. Chairman, Supervisor Bronson, the all but one of the improvement district are street lighting districts, and what we do each year is we collect a levy for the estimated amount of the electrical charges by the various utility companies to run the street lights in the subdivisions. And the other one is the Hayhook Ranch road. It's about 5 miles of dirt road that the people who live within the district pay for the annual maintenance of.
And these districts were created by the residents of these districts.
Mr. Chairman, Supervisor Bronson, that's correct.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Supervisor Carroll.
Mr. Burke, these improvement districts, as was said by Supervisor Bronson, these are neighborhoods that elect through a majority vote to tax themselves for the improvements that we're seeing here. And you put a cushion on these numbers. I expect that some, even when all is said and done, will get a refund of what's left over after this fund is paid for the improvements.
Mr. Chairman, Supervisor Carroll, each year we do factor in a buffer amount to cover the bills that come in before the next year's levy. So there's usually a couple months worth of extra. These are ongoing districts that are paying for the operational costs of the lights. It will require the board to either turn off the lights and shut down the district or for the levies to ever stop. It's basically just to run the operation of the street lights until the district chooses, the board or the members choose to close the district down.
I wasn't clear. I should have separated my reference to the improvement district for the road versus the street light improvement space.
Mr. Chairman, Supervisor Carroll, the road district, I'm actually going to be coming to the board for the Hayhook Road District in the next few weeks to close the portion of the district for the construction of the road. The ongoing maintenance, though, will continue each year for in the neighborhood of $30,000 or $40,000 for the 5 miles of road.
Thank you, Mr. Burke. I intend on supporting the improvement district boards.
Other questions from the board? All right, hearing none, what's the will of the board?
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to move we close the Improvement District Board hearing and adopt the County Improvement District tentative budgets for the fiscal year 2013-2014 as follows. For other improvement district, Hayhook Ranch at $36,000. For street lighting improvement districts, Desert Steps at $2,126. Hermosa Hills Estates, $1,822. Longview Estates Number 1, $3,848. Longview Estates Number 2, $4,455. Rolling Hills, $7,290. Manana Grande B, $3,038. Mañana Grande C, $4,962. Carriage Hills Number 1, $3,544. Lakeside Number 1, $2,835. Carriage Hills Number 3, $1,215. Cardinal Estates, $5,815. Orange Grove Valley, $3,134. Pepper Tree, $4,340. Littletown, $10,104. Midvale Park, $5,911. Peach Valley, $1,550. Oak Tree Number 1, $9,939. Oak Tree Number 2, $7,800. Oak Tree Number 3, $10,225. Salida del Sol, $6,411. And Mortimer Addition, $12,837.
Second.
For a total, according to Supervisor Carroll, of $149,201.
Did that all in my head. Thank you.
No, you're welcome.
Motion and a second before us to close the public hearing on item number 8, Improvement District Board, and to approve the items as read by Supervisor Bronson, but will not be read by the chair. All roll call.
Supervisor Bronson.
Aye.
Supervisor Carroll. Aye. Supervisor Elias.
Aye.
Supervisor Miller.
Aye.
Chairman Valadez.
Aye. By your unanimous vote, motion carries. Moving to Library District Board, item number 9.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to move to close the public hearing and to adopt the Library District tentative budget for fiscal year 2013-2014 in the amount of $35,305,000 for a tentative tax rate of 0.3753.
Second.
Motion and a second to close the public hearing on the Library District Board
Mr.
item.
Chairman?
Supervisor Elias.
Just wanted to take this moment to note and to welcome the Oro Valley Library back into the fold of being a part of the Pima County Free Library District. So just wanted to say I appreciate that.
Indeed. So closing the public hearing, approving item number 9 under Library District Board for a budget of $35,305,000. So for a tentative tax rate of 0.3753. All those, or roll call, please.
Supervisor Bronson.
Aye.
Supervisor Carroll.
Aye.
Supervisor Elias.
Aye.
Supervisor Miller.
No.
Chairman Valadez.
Aye. By your vote of 4 to 1, motion carries. Moving to Stadium District Board, item number 10.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to move to close public hearing and to adopt the Stadium District tentative budget for fiscal year 2013-2014 in the amount of $5,039,746.
All right, the motion before us is on closing the public hearing and approving item number 10 under Stadium District Board for a budget of $5,039,746 and closing public hearing. All those in favor, please signify, or roll call vote.
Supervisor Bronson.
Aye.
Supervisor Carroll.
Nay.
Supervisor Elias.
Aye.
Supervisor Miller.
No.
Chairman Valadez.
Aye. By your vote of 3 to 2, motion carries. Now moving to Board of Supervisors sitting in regular session. Mr. Huckleberry.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, this is the tentative budget for fiscal year 13-14. We've worked to try and provide the board and the public with continuity of service and levels of service that remain essentially unchanged. In the budget transmittal I sent to the board indicated this is a maintenance budget which simply continues services that we've been able to provide even in the face of a decreasing tax base of almost 8%. One of the discussion points was whether or not we've asked departments to further reduce their budgets, and I think I answered that question in the Friday session by saying no, but also continued the answer to say that we've asked departments over a 4-year period to reduce their budgets by anywhere from 12 to 15%. We can't obviously, and this board can impose additional cuts and reductions in budgets, but it means impacts to services. And so there are always consequences to the actions that we ask others to do. In addition, this particular budget does not increase property taxes, contrary to popular opinion. The actual amount of property taxes that we've taken in to support the budget in fiscal year 13-14 are $4.3 million less than the total property taxes taken in this year. We've adjusted the rates, but the rates are adjusted basically to offset the drop in the assessed value of the aggregate property tax base. In all, it's a budget that I can and do recommend to the board that you adopt it. We've gone through a lot of discussion. We've gone through it formally with Supervisor Miller on Friday, and that was a good exercise. My staff and budget staff and I have answered many other questions from other members of the board during this process. It's one that typically starts about November of every preceding year, and it'll start again for fiscal year 14-15 in November of 13, and we invited everyone's participation. In the advent of the internet, we're able to post all of our communications online for the public to review. We posted the recommended tentative budget online the day it was released to the board on April the 30th, and we've got about 6 questions or comments from the public, and we've been able to answer those. And we'll continue to do so, and we invite the open inspection and participation of our budget and are freely available to answer any questions the public may have on it.
Questions from the board?
Mr. Chairman,
Supervisor Brown.
I want to thank Mr. Huckleberry and staff. As you know, many of you who are sitting out in the audience from staff today, my office and I have been in contact with you since November reviewing the budget. I appreciate your ability to make yourself available. I want to take this opportunity to particularly thank Mr. Johnson for the budget that he put together and the farm in which it was put together. I think this is, it was comprehensive, it was comprehensible, which are not the same thing. So I do want to take the time to thank him. And then I think I want to express my concerns based on the information from individuals speaking today, both from staff and from residents. Clearly we heard, particularly in justice and law enforcement, some serious concerns about compression. So I think we need to deal with that, at least a tentative adoption, and I don't think that was dealt with necessarily adequately with Mr. Huckleberry's recommended budget. I think the other thing we heard from the audience, and I think there may be some misconceptions, and I would hope that maybe Mr. Huckleberry or staff could address them, is that we have one of the highest taxes in the nation. And I think there's some misconception again, because although their property taxes may be higher in Pima County to some extent, when you look at the overall tax burden of residents in other counties, and there are 15 counties in Arizona that they have, I think we're about equal. And Mr. Huckleberry, particularly, we're always getting compared to the great state of Maricopa from the north. If you could address the tax issue, the overall tax burden, Pima County versus Maricopa County.
Mr. Huckleberry.
Yes, Mr. Chairman and Supervisor Bronson, this is typically an annual exercise that we go through, because if you begin to normalize tax rates on the property compared to Maricopa County, we're very, very similar by the time you make the adjustments. The adjustments start with, in Maricopa County, they have a assessed value per capita about 20% higher than in Pima County, and that's because they have some centrally assessed properties that are very significant, like the Palo Verde nuclear plant, $1 billion of assessed value that we don't have. So when you take out that 20%, there's an adjustment. Maricopa County also basically supports its county government with regard to its jail through a sales tax. And Pima County does not have a sales tax to support its jail. It's 0.375% in Maricopa County, and so therefore we support our jail through the property tax. In addition to that, in Maricopa County, the $15 million that we transfer to effectively support tertiary care medical facilities, and particularly University of Arizona Medical Center South Campus, in Maricopa County, it's levied on the secondary property tax. It's not on the primary property tax. So when you go through and make all of those adjustments, you can get our primary property tax down to about $1.67, and you look at Maricopa County's at about $1.25, and yeah, they're not identical, but they're not orders of magnitude or 3 times higher. And you can go through that calculation everywhere in Maricopa County, and when we look at even our counties to the north, Pinell County has tax rates that are equivalent to ours, if not in certain areas higher. But they also have a 1-cent sales tax that actually supports county operations in Pinell County. And so we're the only county in Arizona that doesn't have a sales tax to help offset the property tax. But that's a choice we made, but that's the way we structure, and that's what we will continue to do.
Well, frankly, if we had Palo Verde Nuclear, we'd probably be in better shape than Maricopa County.
Mr. Chairman,
Miller.
that gets back to the fact that we're not allowing businesses like Rosemont Copper to get up and running so that we have more tax revenue in the community. And I think that's where we're falling short, is by stopping these businesses from coming in and fighting them rather than welcoming them. So I just wanted to make a comment on that, and then I reiterate my earlier comments that I read to the board. I don't want to go through those again. Thank you.
Other comments from the board? Oh, Mr. Huckleberry.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I think Supervisor Bronson just had the discussion, talked about compression. And I am very sympathetic to the position of the courts with regard to their issues related to market adjustments for certain classifications and compensations, as they talked about earlier in the presentation. But their problem is not unique simply to the courts. The issue of market comparison and classifications is a problem throughout the county. In structuring the compensation package this year, we looked at a number of options and felt that to begin compensation and addressing compensation, it'd be appropriate to do exactly as been recommended, which is across the board adjustments, and they begin to make up for a lack of 6 years of compensation adjustments. During the same 6 years, we've had no market adjustments and classifications, and in addition, there's a difference between market adjustments in certain pay grades and then compression. Compression is, again, a problem that exists throughout the county, and what I had planned to do is begin to start addressing that in the coming fiscal year by a more comprehensive study with regard to market job classifications of all classifications throughout the county, rank them about what are most out of market, so then we can begin to rationally address that. And in addition, we can, by addressing that and then the entire pay ranges in our classification system, we can also begin to address compensation to where, in the case of sheriff deputies, and sometimes we need to go back and reflect on the statistics, is we know we have a number of deputies that go through the system and then they basically top out, but that's how it's designed. It's designed basically to reward deputies about what we call years 2 to 10, and then the rest of their particular kind of service, they're topped out. Last year, we only had 25 deputies out of about 500 leave, and only 3 of those left for a job in another organization. That's not to say, and I think when we had Sergeant Parrish talking about, he mentioned the word, it's a key word, beginning. And so we need to pay attention to that, and I think we intend to do that in this process next year.
Supervisor Elias, and then Supervisor Carroll.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate that. Important budget for us all. We've seen some changes in health services, and I, for one, need to make sure that we recognize and thank the university for the work they're doing at their South Campus and the hospital there. $15 million a year is a substantial amount of money for us to put into that particular service that's being offered, but I don't know how you place a value on saving a mother's life or saving somebody who's in a lot of trouble due to an accident that's occurred over there on Palo Verde and Alvernon. There's a lot of different reasons, geographical as well as recognizing the overall crisis network that we have available in healthcare throughout our community. Wanted to make note of that and say that that $15 million is money well spent and important to all of us and helps keep us whole as a community. Secondly, we have some increases there in the health department that we have not addressed this morning, and I thought maybe Mr. Huckleberry would want to make a comment on that. After I finish here, I just wanted to say that I appreciate the comments from the other members of this board, and pay attention to their suggestions. I can't say that I agree with all of them, but nevertheless, I think we've had a good exchange, a good discussion this year about tentative budget. Hopefully we can finish that up relatively quickly here. But anyways, Mr. Huckleberry, please, some comments about health department budgets.
Mr. Huckleberry.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, the health department budgets, obviously, as we recall from adopting the budget last year, we made a commitment to go back and review the distribution of cost within all of the units that are composed within the health department, including animal care. We did that, found out there were some disproportional subsidies occurring, and this board corrected that mid-year by making further appropriations to health and to ensure that the divisions of expenditures are properly accounted for, and we're doing that now. We're actually increasing our funding to the health department because of the essential services that they're providing, and in addition, we've underfunded in some cases animal care in the past, and are doing things proportionally. It's going to be a process. We've also collapsed departments and agencies that were in health that no longer are really necessary. Department of Institutional Health has been collapsed now back into the health department, so we have a very able health director at this point in time and a medical professional delivering those services, and so we feel fairly comfortable with basically the reorganizations that have taken place as well as the funding levels that we're proposing now.
Thank you, Mr. Huckleberry. Could I just make one additional comment, asking your indulgence, Mr. Chairman? I would also add that Ms. Castillo's comments from Service Employees International Union bear some consideration. She went through them rather quickly, but I think that Chuck was probably taking copious notes there, like he always does. And so I'd like to check in with everybody to make sure that we understand that probably some of those suggestions there deserve fairly serious consideration from this board as we move towards final adoption.
Supervisor Carroll.
Appreciate the opportunity to say over the years we've never had more difficult times than these, and I know according to the county administrator we've seen properties decrease in value, and his budget, even with its small tax increase, for some will result in a tax levy decrease of $4,298,000, or approximately 1.1%. Mr. Huckleberry, I appreciate the effort, especially this year, and applaud the idea that we've been able to shrink payroll through planned attrition and privatization, including, as we know, health as well as public safety, as well as landfills and solid waste. It's been an interesting year to watch Chuck and the board evolve into working with the private sector. I hope those trends continue. We haven't had layoffs and furloughs. I see that most of the employee groups have left, but I think they should knock wood on that item alone. And in the end, I cannot vote for the budget, but I will say I appreciate many of the efforts that this board has made, even to counter a fellow member of the Republican Party that sits here in favor of Rosemont. I appreciate the efforts that you've made, Mr. Huckleberry, to keep our air and our water and our community, especially in District 4, safe from the ravages of that project. So thank you again, Mr. Huckleberry, for giving us the chance to come here on Friday to hear some Q&A with a few dozen other people that were interested. I did hear from many of my constituents who echo the idea that transportation is a very big concern in our district, and I look forward to you hopefully allocating even more money to general road repairs in this current year's fiscal. Thank you.
Other comments? If not, I do have just my share comments. I want to first of all thank Mr. Huckleberry, Mr. Willett, Tom, and Bob for all your work, and certainly all of you and your staffs have been wonderful in terms of answering the questions for me and for my staff. So first of all, I do want to extend a thank you to all of you for that. Having said that, I think some of the comments that we've heard today are right on the mark in terms of what we've had to go through. Last year, we found ourselves in a position where we started talking about what we've been through, when we expect it to end, and frankly, we have seen a historic decrease in the assessed value of Pima County. A 4.2 never seen before, and hopefully no other board besides this one will ever have to deal with that kind of a loss in assessed value. But I think that this board has been responsive to that. We have heard Mr. Huckleberry as well as other board members talk about what we've decreased, how we've tightened our belt. Were we perfect? Probably not. But certainly I think we've gone out of our way to try and accommodate both needing to tighten our belt and needing to provide a base level of service to our constituents. Our employees, frankly, are to be commended because they have done so without any sort of additional compensation in spite of the additional work that they've put in. I think the comments from all of my colleagues are important, whether they be about transportation and the need to deal with the issue of pavement preservation. Obviously, this board passed earlier today a resolution asking others in the region as well as at the national and state levels to look at this issue and move forward with a public dialogue, a discussion that will hopefully bring that together and finally start addressing the issue. I know that in discussions that I've had with several colleagues and other elected officials, it's something we've wanted to do, but we haven't been able to get over that tipping point so that other public bodies start having that discussion that we need to have. Frankly, it's just either we pay now or we pay a lot more later. So I also hear about that we may need to deal not only with the compression issue, but with our public safety officials in terms of what their needs are going into the future. What I'd like to see is the possibility, clearly these are needs that I think are very, very heartfelt by each one of us. And while I don't know if this is possible, I think ideally I would love to see that be a unanimous consent in terms of moving forward, because these are very, very important issues. And I think a lot of them, while this budget is very, very good, have gone unmet, and we're going to, as we heard from Mr. Huckleberry, going to have to look at them into the future, into next year. But I think we need to take a very serious look, as Supervisor Leah said, at what our needs are in order to keep going in the direction we're going, which I think is very, very positive. So with that, what's the will of the board?
Mr. Chairman, based on comments that the board members have made as well as our audience, I'm going to move that we close the public hearing and adopt a tentative county budget for fiscal year 2013-2014 in the amount of $1,270,636,686 for an effective tax rate of 3.71. Question, Mr. Johnson, we are still under truth and taxation with that amount?
Mr. Johnson.
Yes, we're about a penny under that. So.
Okay, thank you. And the reason I'm doing it as opposed to the county administrator's recommended budget, and remember, this sets the ceiling, is that we need to continue the discussion regarding our transportation needs, our dealing with justice and law enforcement and some of their compression issues, and as well as with the rest of our staff across the county. We do have those issues to address that I'm not sure have been adequately addressed. Should my motion succeed, again, we're setting the cap. It can come down at final adoption, but we still, the taxes will still be less. We will not be increasing taxes on anybody. We will still be under the amount that would increase taxes.
Supervisor Carroll.
Mr. Chairman, I know there was a second to that motion. For clarification, I was opening the budget book to the correct page. I believe Mr. Huckleberry's recommended expenditures 1.2 billion. What was your final number?
Well, 126.
Okay, so you have.
My amount, for the record, is $1,270,063,686.
Thank you for the clarification, and Mr. Chairman, I'd ask that you have a roll call vote since there has been some confusion about some of these items. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Supervisor Carroll. They're required at this point. Any other comments? All right. By way of comment, I know that we've increased. But the only thing I'd like to say is that while I intend to support this, I want to make sure that it's used exactly for what we're talking about, and that we don't get creative.
No, I think the issues that need to be addressed are transportation and issues regarding compression and compensation for justice and law enforcement.
All right, with that, the motion before us is on the adoption of item number 11, the tentative current county budget for fiscal year 2013-14 in the amount of $1,270,063,686 for a tentative rate of $3.71. Roll call.
Supervisor Bronson.
Aye.
Supervisor Carroll.
No.
Supervisor Elias.
Aye, aye, aye.
Supervisor Miller.
No.
Chairman Valadez.
Aye. By your vote of 3-2, motion carries. Moving on to item 11, the debt service tentative budget.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to move that we close the public hearing and adopt the debt service tentative budget for fiscal year 2013-2014 in the amount of $124,043,471 for an effective tax rate of 0.7800.
Any comments? All right, hearing none, the motion before us is to close the public hearing and approve item number 12, the debt service tentative budget for an amount of $124,043,471 and a tentative effective rate of 0.7800. Roll call.
Supervisor Bronson.
Aye.
Supervisor Carroll.
No.
Supervisor Elias. Supervisor Miller.
No.
Chairman Valadez.
Aye. By your vote of 3-2, motion carries. Moving on to consent calendar. Do you have any cards? We do have one card for a consent calendar item, and it's Brent Davis. Mr. Davis, if you could please come up, identify yourself for the record, and you have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Mr. Huckleberry, and staff. It's always a pleasure to come down and talk with you about various issues, and I am glad to see that the budget has moved forward. I know those are difficult decisions to make. I'm here to talk about item number 6 on the consent agenda, limited competition procurement award of revenue contracts for auction services. We've been working with the procurement department and have a good relationship with them, and I want to make that clear. We just have a bit of a disagreement on this particular contract. This is a contract for a company to auction off or dispose of county excess or surplus properties, cars, vehicles, heavy equipment, et cetera, and then also some of the other stuff, computers, et cetera. I represent Sierra Auctions, which has had this contract for a number of years. There's 3 points I'll make, and then I'll sit down. The original contract was let under a limited competition procurement, which was sent out, it was issued, then it was canceled. So once it was canceled, no protests were done because we thought it was canceled. Then it was reinstated. So there was no protest period. And that became a problem for, I think, more companies than just us. Secondly, there were a number of pre-qualifications. As you know, there are pre-qualifications for bidding on contracts with Pima County. And it appears to us, and we've pointed this out on several occasions, that some of the pre-qualifications actually became post-qualifications. After the bid was let, then the companies provided information that substantiated that they had done. For example, one of the requirements was to have a Better Business Bureau A+ rating or whatever the rating was, and one of the companies didn't have that, but once the award was made, then all of a sudden they provided that information. Now, if they're post-qualifications, they need to be said. There are other issues, too, that we pointed out. So there were no deviations requested, so we think that that was an irregularity in the process. But the biggest point, and this is the third point, and we may get some agreement here from procurement, this shouldn't have been a bid. A bid is on a specific item where you have a specification. It's difficult to bid a percentage of the auction price when you don't know what the auction price is. The bids range from 0% up to, I suppose, 10%. I don't remember what they actually were, but that would be paid for these services. But the problem is you don't know what the base is. Would you rather pay 4% of $200 or 0% of $100? That's my third point. So all I'm here is to ask that you postpone this. I believe it's for 2 weeks. The next meeting in 2 weeks, 3 weeks?
June 4th.
Yeah, June 4th, to postpone this so we would have an opportunity to come visit with you to discuss this. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Day. Any questions from the board? All right, hearing none, I'll move to the next speaker, which is George Jameson. Please come up, identify yourself for the record, and you have 3 minutes.
My name is George Jameson. I'm a resident of Tucson and Marana. I am also the general manager of Leader Public Auction, who I believe the intent to award this auction services for. We did provide the county with the pre-qualifications, and the county also did open all the bids and then disseminate those bid amounts to all of the participating bidders. I believe that you should go forward with the award as it's written and as your intention today. Everything has been tabled. We have the qualifications. We're a Tucson-based business, and an auction service is not rocket science. If you auction off stuff, it's going to be a fair market value, whether it's at Sierra Auction, at Rod Robertson's, or our auction. The amount of money going back to the county is going to be in the county and the taxpayer's best interest with Leader Public Auction. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions from the board? Thank you. Let me call up Brad Dorsey. Please come up, identify yourself for the record, and you have 3 minutes.
Brad Dorsey, owner of Leader Public Auction. I just wanted to address Mr. Davis's comments as far as post-qualifications. We had submitted everything to the county with our bid. We were qualified. We had an A+ rating. That's never changed. To this date, we still have an A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau. As far as his suggestion that it's hard to provide a bid when you don't know what the amount is, we had past data, and in fact, they've had the contract for, I don't know, several years, so they should have been able to know exactly what that previous data reflects. So we bid the contract accordingly. We were the lowest bid. Really doesn't get any simpler than that. So I'd just like to come up and address it.
Any questions from the board?
Mr. Chairman, is
Supervisor
the
Miller.
procurement staff here? Could I get some comments from you on what transpired on this transaction and what your thoughts are?
Mr. Whitaker.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Supervisor Miller. Yeah, you know, I think this was a well-run solicitation. What Mr. Davis referred to in his beginning comments regarding the limited competition, originally we did a bid, not a request for proposals, but a bid. Sierra Auction had been our auction company for some time, and we enlisted their input to develop the solicitation. Previously, we had used Sierra Auction based upon a cooperative from Maricopa County. Because we utilized them in the development of that solicitation, we wanted to make sure we covered all of our bases, and we felt that we had. Within the IFB, we identified all the minimum requirements that any of the respondents would have to comply with, and the determination as to which firm would be selected was based upon the commission rate. We went through that process, and then towards the end of that solicitation process, there were some concerns by one of our departments that possibly things could have been done differently. At that point in time, the solicitation was canceled prematurely. It shouldn't have been canceled at that point in time because we pulled together the fleet department as well as our RWRD department and reviewed the concerns, and all were in agreement that no, everything was fine. We should try to continue on with the culmination of that solicitation process. In order to best do that, we had to look into the procurement code as to how to accomplish that, since the original solicitation had been inadvertently and prematurely canceled. At that point, we realized that we could go through the limited competition provision in the procurement code so that we could then take the process through to culminate in a recommendation for award. So from that perspective, I think everything was okay. The protest rights of the firms that had responded to the initial solicitation were not impeded until after the solicitation had been canceled. Up until that time, because Sierra Auction had participated in the development of the solicitation and had not expressed any concerns, and furthermore could have filed a pre-bid protest up until the time of the bid opening, I don't think that is really a concern. It was only after the bids opened and the realization of the outcome was evident that it became a bigger concern, I believe, for them. Regarding the minimum qualifications, again, we thought we did a fairly thorough job of doing that. We spent a lot of time looking at what each of the respondents had provided. I have spoken extensively with the president of Sierra Auction, Mark Fuhrer, and reviewed each one of those items, and the sense I got was, yes, he did agree that some of the concerns that they had were somewhat subjective, and overall, yes, all of the respondents did meet the minimum qualifications. Whether it should have been an RFP or a bid, you know, I think that the culmination of this process has resulted in a savings to the county of over 4%. So had we gone with an RFP, could some of the criteria given greater points to one firm over another? I guess that's possible, but we were looking for a firm to meet the minimum qualifications we had set. The most important thing to us was exposure, so that we knew we'd have a lot of respondents that would come to the auctions, and to make sure that we optimize the value to the county. Are there any other questions?
So there were no pre-bid questions. There were no protests at that time prior to the bid.
Supervisor Miller, no, there were not.
All right. Thank you.
Any other questions from the board? Thank you. What's the will of the board?
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to move consent in its entirety.
Second.
Motions.
Mr. Chairman?
Supervisor Elias.
I'd like to have an item pulled, actually, for discussion and a separate vote.
Okay, I withdraw my motion.
Page and item number, please.
Thank you, Supervisor. I appreciate your indulgence. What we're looking at is item 7 on page 8, you know, and did I get that right?
Yeah, you did.
The wastewater item?
Yes.
Yep.
DBO.
Yeah, I got a problem with that one, you guys. Here we are, spending $400,000 for 5 employees for 6 months and paying their relocation costs and their lodging and their food and a rental car for them. Kind of high salaries, I guess. I don't have anything against working people making money, that's for sure, but gosh, you know, we just got through having an amazing amount of attrition in that department. Seems to me we could have hired one of those folks, or this company could have hired 4 of those folks to act as operators on this particular set of work that needs to be done here as we make this transition and save us a bunch of money. I don't know, it just sounds kind of crazy. And, you know, I wish that we could move this at least to next month so we can have a little more discussion about it. Short of that, I need to vote against this item.
Mr. Chairman?
Hang on, let me have Mr. Huckleberry address and then Mr. Carroll. Mr.
Thank you
Huckleberry.
very much, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate it.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, this is an item that basically we're in the process of phasing out the Roger wastewater treatment plant and phasing in the new water campus. And during that process, we have this overlap. And so we can't staff both, and so this is what that is. That being said, we can certainly continue this a month, get the alternatives, talk about alternatives to cost, whether or not we can hire temps somewhere in Arizona. That's fine. I think we can have that discussion.
I would appreciate that if we can move down that road, like I said. Otherwise, you know, it becomes more difficult for us.
You want to put that in the form of a motion?
Yeah, I'll go
Well,
ahead and
hang on.
move that we continue item
Supervisor
7.
Elias?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's
I
okay.
apologize.
No, I anticipate your motion, and I'll second that. Go ahead and complete.
Well, what I was going to
complete your
do,
motion.
I was going to move that we continue this item until our first meeting in July.
I'll second
Our
that.
only meeting in July, if I'm not
I'll
if
second
I'm not
that.
mistaken.
And I wanted to ask
Yeah. I believe it's the 7th.
Mr. Chairman?
Second.
Mr. Bernal.
Oh,
Mr.
Mr. Bernal.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, the only issue is the timing. As you notice in the material, we would really prefer to have the transition team in place by July 1st. We need about 6 or 7 months there to have this overlap, because we will be losing some employees from Pima County staff to the contractor staff come July 1st.
I'll go ahead and move that to, do we have a June 18th meeting, Robin? Why don't we go ahead and move it to June 18th? Is that all right, John? That work a little better for you? All right, thank you.
I'll support the motion with a second, Mr. Chairman.
All right, motion and a second. Any comment?
Mr. Chairman.
Supervisor Carroll.
I just wanted to make sure I was clear. This is going to fund temporary staffing, which provides transition at the operations of the Roger Road facility. Am I correct, Mr. Bernal? And most of this current county staff will have the chance to operate or to continue their employment at that facility.
Mr. Chairman, Supervisor Carroll, we're abiding by the contract specifications that requires the incoming design, build, operate contractor to hire 75% of his staff locally from our current staff.
Mm-hmm.
That means 11 employees will move over. And that's where we're having to address this overlap
Right.
period where both the old facility and the new facility will be operating.
Well, I was wondering, and when it came to the $400,000, I wanted to have that clarified myself. Supervisor Elias has said that that's going to be for the for 5 employees for 6 months. That's none of our own staff taking part of that. They're not early hires, early commits that moved over to
No, these are employees that need to be brought in to help us operate the existing facility from a contractor. Again, our employees will move over to the new design, build, operate contractor. And in fact, we're also moving other wastewater employees into that facility to make up the difference, because the 4 or 5 will not do the job for us at the old facility.
Did Mr. Jenkins have the chance to meet with these 5 employees? Have we reviewed their backgrounds? I mean, he knows his current employees. He knows their skills, their qualities, and their weaknesses, I'm sure. But has he had the chance to review, and was he part of the selection committee that brings these 5 new people to his operation?
Mr. Chairman, Supervisor Carroll, initially we went to CH2M Hill for all the employees that we needed. It turns out that they were ready to bring in some very seasoned employees that were even more expensive than these. We said, no, that's more than we want. We can move some of our folks in, but we did need some experienced employees. Yes, the wastewater staff is very familiar with the background and qualifications of the people that are being brought forward.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Supervisor Bronson.
are we having a celebration when we decommission Roger?
Mr. Chairman, Supervisor Bronson, absolutely. But you may see the remnant facilities there for quite some time to come, because we've chosen not to demolish them immediately.
The facilities, but not the odor? Not the
the odor's gone.
Thank you. The byproduct.
Supervisor Miller.
Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to clarify, my understanding was that this was expertise that we did not have in the county to come in and train the county employees, or is that incorrect?
Mr. Chairman and Supervisor Miller, that's not quite correct. No, we have capable staff. Again, we're losing a lot of those to the contractor. We are moving some others from other facilities that can help us out in the interim, but we needed more staff. That's what these are.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Huckleberry.
Yeah, I think one of the questions is whether or not it's more effective and cost effective for us to use the contractor, or for whether or not there are those resources in Arizona that can be attracted otherwise. And I think that's what we need to get the answers and have the discussions, because there's a lot of wastewater treatment facilities that are operated statewide in the Maricopa area.
All right, the motion before us is on the continuance of item number 7 on the consent calendar, page 8 on the agenda, to the June 18th board meeting. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 All opposed, please signify by saying nay. By unanimous vote, ayes have it. What's the will of the board on the remainder?
Mr. Chairman?
Supervisor Elias.
On item 6 on page 7, you know, I'm not particularly compelled by the speakers that we heard today, but then when I heard our procurement director talk, I got extremely nervous, because he sounded like he was describing the Midway at the Pima County Fair. So it sounded like a carnival rather than a clean procurement deal. I'd like to just wait until our next meeting so we can get a little clarification on it. Like I said, I was not compelled really either way, but George made me feel somewhat uneasy about the whole thing.
You know, we've continued this, Supervisor Elias, several times.
I know.
And I think we've gotten the clarification. I would like to move on it today.
Very well. If that's
Second.
I'm willing to go along with that.
Was that a motion on the remainder, or was the motion on item 6 specifically?
No, it wasn't a motion.
Oh, okay.
It was a discussion.
Okay, in that case, what's the...
I'm going to
board?
move the remainder of consent in its entirety.
Motion and a second to approve the remainder of consent in its entirety. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 All opposed, please signify by saying nay. Ayes have it. Moving to real property, item number 16.
Mr. Chairman, I'll move the item.
Mr. Chairman,
Supervisor Miller.
this is the item that I moved to continue a few weeks ago, and I've done a little more research on this item, and one of the things that I found, we're paying $1.46 million, which includes the closing costs of $60,000. The appraisal actually came in at, I think it was $1.26 million, and we're paying $1.4 million for the property. And this really concerns me that we're paying more than what our appraisal is coming up. And then I looked at I pulled the assessed value on this, and on the 2 parcels, it's roughly $700,000. Now, either we have been very undervalued and collecting too little tax, or we're paying too much for this property. And this just is, as I looked at it, I thought, why would it be valued so low in the assessors? And then we have an appraisal that says 1.2 million, we're paying 1.4. And I looked at the property taxes, which are roughly $28,000 per year. 2012 is delinquent. I couldn't get data back prior to that. But a concern on this is, number one, we're paying more than our appraised value. Number two, we're taking off a taxable property off the tax rolls. And are the delinquent taxes being taken into consideration here? I didn't see anything in the background materials. And again, I think that Pima County has enough open facilities. We have a lot of capacity in a lot of different areas. We just talked about the courthouse being, what was it, 50% capacity? I don't see that we have the money to pay $1.5 million for yet another building that we're taking off the tax rolls.
Mr. Huckleberry.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, a couple of points. First, the appraisal is our appraisal. If you took the owner's appraisal, you'd see it higher than even the sale price. So it's a pretty typical negotiation issue. With regard to assessed value, I think that's a standard problem everywhere in the county. With you see, market transactions versus assessed values of the assessor. It happens all the time, and it's just a fact of life and we obviously all know that because of our lagging tax base, our tax base and assessed values frankly don't reflect real world values for about 2 years. And so even if it was assessed correctly, you're still going to see it significantly down. With regard to back taxes, those are basically subject to resolution at closing, which simply means we take the money.
Mr. Chairman.
Supervisor Carroll.
If there's no further comments from District 1, I'd like to say that
Are you going to make a motion?
no, I wanted to make a comment, if I could. After it was brought up that, there might be an opportunity for some excess capacity at the Peacock building or the building that we purchased on 22nd Street, we found that the storage there would be incompatible. What I did do in the meantime was I went ahead and took the tour of the 1505 East Apache Park Place building. It's at the old Apache Drive-In. I'd like to be able to say that there's many other ways besides just looking at assessed values or the overall one appraisal versus both. I think that comparables and is another way, but more importantly in this category of purchase is market value. I know we have some leases in the area that we currently pay on to private landlords. This building is in the vicinity of the sheriff's headquarters on Benson Highway. When I did look at the building, it looks in excellent condition. It's a block building. It's dock high all the way around. It's got security and walk-in coolers and freezer space, which I think is a good fit for our equipment and our service products that are going to be stored there. It's got height and all the other racking capability, and I wanted to make sure if there is surplus at this building that we don't buy another one in the future. This doesn't look like it'll be full it's a 20,000 square foot building. And as I said, it's got a sprinkler system and replacement cost on that size of a building. I'm sure it'd be more than $70 a foot, especially in the location. There is other available buildings out there, but they're metal constructed and they're not probably fit for a long-term government use. They depreciate quicker and they don't last as long, and certainly they are easier to break into. The question I had overall on this, and I guess Mr. Spalding can tell us, what's the life compared to if we continued to pay rent, if we continued to find an appropriate building for this warehousing, whether it's one that we currently occupy or another, would you tell me how long, how do they stack up versus continuing to lease versus purchasing this building? Will the cost be offset by the flood control building sale as well that I think you mentioned to me, and how?
Mr. Spalding.
Mr. Chairman, Supervisor Carroll, you know, the lifespan of a building, the way it's constructed, the one that we're contemplating purchase, easily 50 years. The wear and tear on the building is very minimal in terms of perhaps the building you're sitting in. It's a very static use. We're essentially just storing stuff in it. What's not pointed out, perhaps, or those of you who haven't had a chance to visit the facility personally, it does have over 5,000 square feet of refrigerated storage, which can be of use to the health department, which would be one of the tenants that we're considering moving out to that facility. And then the end game to this purchase, if you will, is the eventual hopeful sale of 97 East Congress, which could not be at a better time in terms of rising real estate prices in downtown with the streetcar, you know, hopefully going by in short order. I think that makes that a very attractive building. So this, coupled with the moves that I shared with you on the Peacock building, allows us to actually reduce county square footage by about 23,000 square feet.
And we have plenty of room downtown. You're not going to circularize the 97 East Congress basement and all on the trolley line for another county use. You're going to put it in the private sector?
I believe so, correct.
Well, that would be the hope. How many square feet is that building?
Don't know if I know the 97 East Congress square foot building or what that square footage is.
Probably about 50,000 square
Does that
feet.
include the basement?
No. And so if you've got, you know, because flood control operates on a floor and a half or 2 floors, and Indian Center operates on another, and then the basement's courts and other functions.
I'm sorry, Chuck. I actually do have it in my
Do you?
notes.
Okay.
The 97 East Congress square footage is 44,186.
You were pretty close.
He's close.
Thank you very much. Do you know all by heart our entire inventory of buildings, Chuck? I'm getting worried up here.
Which address? Mr.
I'd
Chairman.
say that even at its age, because it's on the trolley line, because it's downtown, there's a paucity of available space. I would hope that we don't go out to the market to try to rent it, that we do go out for a cash sale. And I would see that it would bring a pretty good number based on the comps I've seen of other office buildings downtown or in the university sector. Thank you very much. This subcategory, I think downtown is, as you said, probably not a better time to throw a building on the market than as soon as they take down all the barricades from the most recent construction in front of that space. Thank you, and I appreciate, Mr. Huckleberry, I congratulate you on your memory of on your obvious study of the real estate that we own and operate out of. Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Chairman and Supervisor Carroll, to answer your question, the payout and deferred rent is 9.8 years versus a 50-year life.
Okay, so that's very helpful, and thank you. 20% of the cost will own the building.
Supervisor Bronson and Supervisor Elias.
Bronson, you first. I just have one more question, real quick. Thank you. Mr. Huckleberry, Supervisor Miller said the appraisal that we have is $1.6 million. What is the appraisal the owner offered us?
Mr.
Since we didn't have that information, because kind of working with one is like a bicycle with one tire, but it's got to have two.
Typically, you know, most of the time, most of these owners want substantially more.
Sure.
And I can try and get that to you. I don't know if we have, but I think the discussion was you know, 1.26 million. If you look at all of our acquisitions, and if it's 1.4, and cost associated with it, that's fairly comparable.
Right.
We're always typically within, if we're within 10% of our appraisal, we call that a pretty good negotiation.
Sure. And I understand that. I just thought it might help us understand the deal a little better. Reed, do you have that by chance? Or Neil, how about you? It's a popularity contest back there, Neil. I don't know.
Okay. Chairman Valadez, Supervisor Elias, I don't have the exact figure, but it was over 1.6 million.
Okay. So pretty much splitting the difference is what we're doing, just like Mr. Huckleberry suggested. And I believe Mr. Cronenberg. Thank you very much for that. Go ahead, Supervisor Bronson. Thank you for your patience.
According to the clerk, we do.
Okay.
I do, however, have a speaker card. It is not a hearing. Do you wish to hear from the speaker?
Oh, man, that's fine with
Okay.
me. Don't bother
Let
me.
me call on the speaker then. I'll give you 3 minutes, and it's Mark Finchu. Please identify yourself for the record, and you have 3 minutes.
Chairman Valdez, honorable supervisors, my name is Mark Fincham. I'm a resident of Oro Valley, and very happy to have been in Pima County since 1999. I'm also a licensee with the Arizona Department of Real Estate, an associate broker with a large but unnamed real estate firm in Tucson. Thank you for the opportunity to speak concerning the proposed purchase of Pima County, or by Pima County, these two parcels. For clarity, one is at 1505 East Apache Park. The second is at 1680 Benson Highway East. And I've been given to understand that there is currently an offer on the table for $1.4 million based on an internal appraisal of $1.262 million. The value of these two parcels set by Pima County Assessor totals $613,573. Now, if we were to split those apart, I beg your pardon, that's for the larger parcel with a structure. The smaller parcel is $86,324, which comes to about $700,000 for the package. When we look at that for market value, dirt basically is going for about $3 a square foot in Pima County, depending upon its area. And the parcel with a structure on it would be somewhere between $40 and $100 a square foot. I've just got some concerns. I don't doubt that this structure is probably valuable to the structural stock for the county. But after an examination of the parcel, the land, and I've run this by several of my associate commercial brokers, if this were in the real world, top dollar would be $126,000. And I realize we're splitting hairs at 10%, but it's 10%. And when we're looking at the idea of trying to spread money across employment, increasing folks, and trying to, I think the term was make whole some of the county employees who've been taking it on the chin for a number of years, that concerns me. I am a fair guy. So these values have also been confirmed by CoStar, which is the commercial real estate program that we used for both to list a property and to provide counsel on comparative analysis. So in closing, I'm expressing my concern that we're going way above, 10% is quite a bit, way above the buyer's appraised value. And I've got every belief that Pima County has got a good internal appraiser. The other thing that I bring to the fore of your mind is, will this have an impact on all the surrounding properties, and will we see their property values increase by as much as 100%? Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so we have a motion on the board to approve item number 16. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, please signify by saying nay.
No.
By your vote of 4-1, motion carries. Moving on to hearings, franchise licenses and permits, and item number 17 and 18. I will note that on the application on number 17, it does state in the application the local fire district and/or state fire marshal may conduct an independent inspection which has the authority to override permit approval.
Thank you. I was going to ask you that. Okay, perfect. Is there anyone in the audience that wishes to address us on these items at this time? If not, I'm going to move that we close the public hearing and approve items 17 and 18.
Second. Motion and a second to approve, close the public hearing and approve items 17 and 18. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, please signify by saying nay. Ayes have it. Moving on to item 19, plat note.
Mr. Chairman, I'd
Supervisor
like
Miller.
to make a motion to approve, close the public hearing and approve item.
Yeah,
Oh, we do?
we
Okay,
have.
sorry.
He does wish to speak. If you'd like, we can hear him before you make the motion. Todd Vandera. Please come up, identify yourself for the record, and you have 3 minutes.
So I am Todd Vandrow, and I'm just coming here. I own the actual lot behind Lot 6. And the paperwork that I have, as far as changes, I'm just not clear on exactly what the changes are. So between the two lots, there's 30 feet of undisturbed area that allows wildlife and stuff to move through there. And we bought it knowing that, and then I think it wants to be changed. And so I'm just here to find out exactly what those changes are.
Mr. Colton?
Mr. Chairman, this is a request by...
I think he wants to know location because you're moving something around, and he
Yeah.
wants to know how it affects him.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, Supervisor Bronson, the issue is that there is 6,737 square foot of natural open space on this property, as there is on adjacent properties. It was allocated based on the 30% set aside when the subdivision plat was done in 2009. The property owner is requesting that they still maintain 6,737 square feet of natural open space, but it be partially shifted so that it is...
Can you show him visually?
Yeah,
I mean, that's what he's asking.
Sure. I have to come up there.
Yeah, come on up and so he can see.
So,
Into the mic, please.
yes.
We're both
And you-
vertically challenged,
Right,
and
yeah.
realize that.
And the board has this in their package, but it's the Natural Open Space Exchange map that's on a map done by Aero Land Survey. And this is your property back here?
I'm Lot 4.
Okay. So basically what happens is that it still remains open space adjacent to the property, but it tapers back and some open space is added here. From a vegetative value, there's effectively no difference. They did a 30% set aside. It's not.
So how does it affect his property?
So it basically compresses the open space adjacent to his property in such a manner. His property is here, and this is the subject property, so it shifts it from here to include this triangular piece and then this piece over here, and it allows the property owner to utilize a piece of the property for pool and stuff for their grandkids, and as I recall from the application. The applicant may be present as well.
Okay.
We also have one additional letter of support that came from the Thomases.
I actually have two
That's
that I was
on
going to submit for the record, one from the Thomases and one from the Sheltons.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't get that other one. So that's what the change is.
Sure.
Okay.
Am I allowed to speak now? So, I mean, the thing is that we bought this with knowing that there was a common area between the two. Now that the people are building the house, they want to change this, and I'm wondering if that is something that applies now to both lots or to all lots within this area, or it's only based on here, and it doesn't allow also the free area to move completely through the lots. I think the purpose of it was, and the point of buying the place was to allow things to be able to be between there so that you weren't right next to your neighbors, and that, obviously they're getting rid of that. If you look at the very bottom, there's no more free space.
Now, where's your house located in?
Well, I will be building here on this
Oh,
side.
you haven't built yet?
No, they're building here, and obviously this was the free area between the two, and it was divided, I think it was 30 feet total with 15 on their side and 15 on ours, or maybe 20 on theirs and 20 on ours, with the free space all the way through so that you would have natural life coming through, and obviously it's being closed off now at the bottom. And so, but this is the first time I've seen this, so I didn't know exactly what was going on.
Yeah. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, the area would be more constricted if it's approved. It would still allow things to be approved, wildlife to move through there. It was identified as natural open space for vegetative protection, more so than this case than wildlife protection. This is not in the conservation land system
To
area.
his question, will he have to maintain, he could come in for a plat note waiver too when he builds?
Yes.
Okay, but, okay.
It would be a separate action, but you could also do that if you were in a similar situation. And so, yes, it would go through exactly the same process.
Okay. I just want to make a comment, and I think it's very misleading then when people sell properties and things are changed, that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Miller.
I was going to ask the question, but Sharon asked it for me, so thank you. I'm going to go ahead and move that we approve this item.
Second.
Motion.
Close the hearing.
Close the public hearing and approve this item. Plat note modification P 1209-010, Chula Vista Lot 6.
Motion, motion and second to close the public hearing and approve item number 19. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, please signify by saying nay. Ayes have it. Moving on to transportation, items 20 and 21, and ordinance number 2013, 29, and 30.
Mr. Chairman, if there's no one in the audience that wishes to address us on these items, I'm going to move that we close public hearing and approve items 20 and 21 and ordinances 2013, 29, and 30.
Motion and a second to close the public hearing and approve item number 20 and 21, ordinance number 2013-29 and 30. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please signify by saying nay. Ayes have it. Moving on to the addendum agenda, County Administrator, item 1 and 2. Supervisor Elias.
I'd go ahead and move those two items.
Mr. Chairman?
Second.
Supervisor Miller.
I had a couple of comments on these two items. We received a memo from Mr. Huckleberry after the April 9th meeting where we approved $75,000 out of this fund for Literacy Connects. This fund was overrun by $359,000 prior to that meeting. After that meeting, we were overrun by $434,000, and now we're back again to spend more money out of a fund that is overrun by 51%. How can we get our spending under control if we're willing to continue overrunning these funds, this contingency fund, by 51% without consequence? Again, I believe this is irresponsible management of taxpayer funds, and that we should not be continuing to approve budget items that come out of a fund that's overrun by this much. Thank you.
Mr. Huckleberry, do you want to respond?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. I think my memorandum said be cautious, and what that means is that we have judgment and damages that are reserves that aren't yet expended. In my view, $12,000 is being cautious. Now, if someone asks for $120,000, I'm have an entirely different position.
Mr. Huckleberry.
Ms. Carroll.
If you're finished, Supervisor Miller. Mr. Huckleberry has brought up earlier, I thought you did show great restraint when it was to Literacy Connects. That original request was $165,000. It was funded at $75,000, and that's probably the last of that size that's going to be coming through your wish list for outside agencies or nonprofits. I do believe that the Youth Corps of America and the Juneteenth Festival are worth supporting today. What was their original request? Do you have a record of that?
Mr. Chairman, these are amounts that historically we've funded at this level. The June 16th is recurring annually, and I think for about the last 3 or 4 years it's been $6,000. And I think the same thing with the Youth Corps.
Well, thank you very much for those explanations.
Supervisor Miller.
Mr. Chairman, my comment is that we're overrun by over $434,000, and I think that whether these are $6,000 items is not the point I'm trying to make. The point I'm trying to make is that we're overrun on this budget by 51% and not on these particular items being small dollars. It's the overall budget that we're overrun by. So that was the point I'm trying to make. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Supervisor Elias.
I would just comment that, you know, spending $6,000 with Youth Corps of America provides services to, helps to provide services to 100 youth to help keep them out of trouble and keep them busy during the summer months. Probably a pretty wise expenditure of money, given the fact that it's pretty easy for high school age kids to destroy something worth $6,000 in about 30 seconds. So I would just say that that's probably a good expenditure of money. And certainly the memories and the truths that are created by local festivals are real. They're valuable. And again, $6,000 for the 43rd annual Juneteenth Festival is probably a pretty reasonable amount of money to spend. Thank you.
All right, there's a motion and a second. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 All opposed, please signify by saying nay.
No.
By your vote of 4-1, motion carries. Moving on to item number 3.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to move both item 3 and 4 at this time.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve item number 3 and 4 on the addendum agenda. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, please signify by saying nay. By unanimous vote, motion carries. Moving on to call to the public. I do have one speaker card. Anthony Sizer, please come up, identify yourself for the record, sir, and you have 3 minutes.
Hello, my name is Anthony Sizer. I am an engineer at Raytheon. I'm here to basically present to you guys my concerns, along with several other fathers. It seems like it's a serious concern with Pima County Superior Court. The commissioners and their conducts related to appropriate decision-making and rulings associated to children. I'm going to go ahead and present specifically my case first. I did provide exhibits to the clerk. First of all, my daughter was lost on Broadway Boulevard, 8:30 at night, and CPS found that substantially concerning and directed me to file a motion with the Pima County Superior Court to do a change in custody. The change in custody was basically filed fairly quick. Commissioner Margaret Maxwell basically didn't want to address the emergency custody and elongated the process for 6 months, saying that she doesn't have time. This is what she specifically stated during a hearing. And then after that, she acknowledged that she was a conflict to the case and recused herself. But during her recusal process, she cited the note that the emergency custody is moot and vacated it. The next judge took over, which was Commissioner Dean Christoffel. Commissioner Dean Christoffel basically said, I need to go on vacation. Apparently he went to France, and said that he wasn't going to be able to address the issues of emergency custody nor the original petition addressing medical neglect by the mother. So the concern is that the trial basically ended up being 11 months later, which is not an emergency custody response at all. Furthermore, the judge basically said, that the issues happened a long time ago. So I believe that there were some evasive behaviors that resulted in my inability to get equal access to the justice system as far as being able to protect my daughter. The concern is that it's not just me. I'm not the only father that apparently is going through these kind of evasive behaviors by the commissions. I did file a complaint with the Commissions on Judicial Conduct. The commission said that they can only look at issues related to the judge's verbal behaviors or conduct, but they can't address a legal maneuvering behavior or tactics associated to a court process. So I find that there's no avenue of accountability, and there are too many fathers going through this. There's another father that basically had lost basically his custody, and he was forced to live in a car. And his ex-wife basically had drug issues, and the court docket shows, there's drug issues going on, and the court wouldn't address it. It lasted 5 years, and those children are basically damaged. And I'm concerned that my daughter, not only was she lost on Broad Road, there's multiple other CPS incidents involving
Mr.
burn marks
I'm
and
going
all
to
this
ask you
kind of stuff.
to please summarize.
Okay, so in summary, I feel that there needs to be something brought up with regard to Commissioner Christoffel and Margaret Maxwell not addressing this in a professional manner. There was also legal issues involving not following process, and my due process basically was limited.
And just so you know, our ability to respond to call of the public is very, very limited under law. But I would suggest, I believe you're in Supervisor Carroll's district, that you may want to
Yes.
talk to him
Okay.
after the meeting.
That's my number. If you have somewhere to be, or if you'd like to talk to me about it, you certainly have a sympathetic ear in my district. I'm a father, and I appreciate you coming today.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else here who would like to address the board of the call of the public? Seeing no one, this meeting stands adjourned.